Yeah. Members, good evening. I'd like to welcome members of the public to this meeting of the East Cambridgeshire District Council, especially those members of the press and public watching on the live stream on the council's YouTube channel. If the live stream goes down, I will pause the meeting in order to resolve the problem. I would ask members to ensure that they switch their microphone on in front of them and speak to the mic so that it can be picked up on the live stream. Sadly, since our last meeting, the council was deeply saddened that Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II passed away on the 8th of September. Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth II had ruled for longer than any other monarch in British history, carrying out her duties with dedication and providing unfaltering service. On behalf of the residents of the district, I sent a letter of condolence to King Charles III. I attended the official proclamation of the new sovereign, King Charles III, at Ely Cathedral on the 11th of September, and the Thanksgiving service for Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth II on the following Sunday. I would ask that members rise to observe a minute's silence in memory of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Thank you, members. Move on to item 1 on the agenda, which is public question time. Do we have any questions? There are no public questions. Item 2 then is apologies for absence. Tracy.
Thank you, Chairman. We have apologies from councillors Joshua and Daniel Schumann. And I think there are 2 other members missing at the moment. I don't know if they're due to come or not.
You got those 2, did you, Tracy? Thank you. Declarations of interest to receive. Declarations of interest from members for any item on the agenda in accordance with the members' code of conduct. Any declarations? I'm seeing no indication, so thank you. Moving on. Minutes of the 14th of July to confirm as a correct record. I understand from we have a minor typo from Councillor Bailey.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just a small matter on page 10. The final paragraph about halfway down, it should read second efforts at finding a viable use, not funding. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other? No, in which case I'll take those minutes as read. Thank you. Moving on, Chairman's announcements. The only announcement I've got is I attended the High Sheriff's Justice Service last Sunday on behalf of the council. And then moving on to, as you can see, I've got Superintendent James Sutherland on my left, who is now going to talk to us about parking enforcement. That's it. Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. Very nice to be back with you. Forgive me if some of this update may be a little dry and technical, certainly not as interesting as other things that are going on, because we are moving from kind of the broad concept that I came here last time to discuss with you and into some more of the actual detail about what this will what this will look like. When I was last here, I was asked a number of very pertinent and very searching questions around some of the more nuts and bolts about what this will look like, all of which I acknowledge were good questions and things had to go away. And that is largely what I've been focusing on over the last few months. So in relation to this update, I will talk about the exploratory work and the progress we've made in kind of two broad spheres. The first being the legal aspects of this, the second being the technical, operational and kind of logistical questions around it. I'll update on kind of one of the key blockers which I've faced and why we've had a little bit of an issue around it, not insurmountable, but I will come on to that. And then with the leave of the chair, I'll be very happy to take any questions that people have at the end. Obviously, the chair introduced it around parking enforcement. My update is on the development of the road safety police service volunteer role. Now, I fully appreciate that the origins of this came from local concerns around parking, and I will speak to that. You will, I hope, understand and forgive me if a lot of my concerns remain around road safety and dealing with parking within that. And not for dry academic reasons. I was the duty goal commander for Cambridgeshire Police over the weekend, and I'm sure it won't have escaped many people's attention that multiple people were killed on our roads this weekend, including not too far from here. And I can't speak to the detail of any of those because obviously there are ongoing investigations in relation to them. What I can say from many years of experience in roads policing, including around this area, that the police and the police enforcement of certain laws is absolutely key to making our roads safer. And many road accidents could be prevented if we were able to effectively enforce and educate drivers on certain habits, speed being an absolutely key one. So for very good reasons, my focus is overwhelmingly still on the road safety aspects of this. However, as previously discussed, I believe that we have a potential solution to ameliorate some of the parking issues that we experience, that you all experience here in Ely. So, looking first at the legal aspects of this. The most challenging thing about this entire project, trying to get a new police service volunteer role, I should probably just, I'm sure most of you are very familiar, but just in case you weren't here last time, or you weren't, I'll just give a very, very short summary of what it is I'm looking at, just in case anybody sat there thinking, what is this chap going on about? What I have essentially proposed to this chamber the last time I was here is that Cambridgeshire Police create a new police service volunteer role of road safety officer, a post which we hope to imbue with actual legal powers to be able to enforce some aspects of the law. So a step up on long-standing schemes like community speed watch schemes, and drawing much more of its kind of inspiration from the Special Constabulary and the Special Constabulary Voluntary Speed Team, which we have operating this in this area. So a much bigger evolution around the use of police service volunteers than certainly we've ever had in Cambridgeshire. So that's just a very short summary of what it is we're looking at. So on the legal side of things, the single biggest challenge is that the relevant piece of legislation, which is section 38 of the 2017 Policing and Crime Act, which I say in summary, it's a very short section. What it says is that there is a small list of powers which a chief constable cannot give to volunteers. And if that power is not on that list, then the chief constable may give that power to a volunteer. So it took the existing legislation and it turned it around on its head. The list of powers the chief can't give to a volunteer is short and very sensible. We can't give a volunteer powers of arrest or search or anything to do with police custody or anything to do with terrorism, all of which very sensible. Everything else, if it's not on that list, then it is possible. And there is no power on that list which directly relates to the vast majority of legislation around road safety and enforcement of road traffic laws. So This created the opportunity for us to actually be able to create a police service volunteer role and to give them certain powers of enforcement under Section 38. Why is this difficult? It's primarily difficult because nobody, with a couple of exceptions I'll come on to, has done it before. So it has not created the revolution in the use of kind of citizens in policing, as it's officially termed, which I think was possibly intended at the time, in large part because shortly after the passing of the Act, there was the 2-year interruption of COVID, in which nationally, I think, had a massive impact on the citizens in policing programme, because frankly, the only people we wanted in police stations, the people who absolutely had to be there. So I think nationally, the whole programme was slightly interrupted, and therefore the use of Section 38 around the country has not been that great. In some ways, that's quite exciting because it's nice to do new things, but we're a naturally cautious organisation, as you would expect, and we do like to be able to find some precedents just to make sure that we're not doing anything illegal or daft. So I've been searching around the whole country, looking for examples of where this has been used and how, to sort of draw on any sort of prior expertise or learning that is out there so we can follow in their footsteps. And there is astoundingly little. However, I have found 2 useful examples. Essex Police have conferred some powers that are very similar to what I'm proposing to their community speed watch enforcement group. So they do actually have volunteers who have had deferred powers to actually be able to issue tickets at the roadside. Not quite as ambitious as what I'm looking at, but it is very useful that a force has actually done something similar. The second use is not, I think, what I was expecting, but it has turned out, for very dry technical legal reasons, to be a very useful act to help our safety camera vans and our central ticket offices, the people who actually process fines and all that sort of thing. Because for kind of legacy legal issues, there had to be a police constable somewhere in the system deciding to issue fixed penalty notices. It didn't matter how senior a civilian member of staff was in the management, there still had to be somewhere in the decision-making process a PC. The Act has allowed some central ticket offices to effectively confer that power and to take that out. It's also been used effectively. A lot of safety camera vans, the mobile speed vans that you'll sometimes see at the side of our faster roads or motorway bridges, they're all operated by civilians. Some police forces have conferred powers of constables to those operators in order to be able to stop the little trend we saw in the last couple of years of vigilante motorists pulling outside speed vans, putting their bonnets up and blocking the cameras. The fact that the operators of those vans have some conferred powers effectively makes that an offence, because when you have a conferred power of a constable, stopping the person who has that power from carrying out their duties is a de facto offence of obstructing a police constable. So what we've seen nationally, the trends, which is very useful, is that that type of behaviour has largely gone away. So there has been some use of Section 38, not very much at all. There's been a national survey by the National Citizens in Policing League to see if there are any examples that we're not aware of. I've asked for access to the results of that survey. So if there is anything going on out there, I will be able to find it. But I have looked very hard, and I've certainly searched around the region, and there is not a great deal. But those 2 examples. What has been useful about that is I have been able to find a subject matter expert in the use of Section 38 powers, who's a member of the Road Safety Support Group, which is essentially a consortium of which Cambridgeshire Police is a part. And they provide expert legal advice and expert witnesses where they're required around things like speeding enforcement. So, for example, if a motorist who's done 100 miles an hour through a speed camera goes to court claiming the camera isn't faulty or lasers aren't real or something of that sort, then it is the Road Safety Support Group who are able to go and provide expert witness on the technical aspects of this. So I found a subject matter expert within that who has in fact delivered the legal advice and the training, most importantly, to a number of police forces who have used Section 38 in this limited way, and especially key for me to Essex Police when they've given volunteers those powers. And the SME has tentatively agreed to me, and indeed provided me some costings, which are extremely reasonable, of his willingness to come in and to train our volunteers as and when we are ready to do so. So there is still some questions that I need to be absolutely sure of on the use of Section 38. However, I have not come across anything so far that suggests that my understanding of our ability to use these powers and what it is I'm essentially proposing to all of you is wrong or faulty or we can't do it. It's simply that there isn't a great many examples of it out there, but I can't see any legal blockers. I certainly have not found any instances anywhere of anybody using it in relation to parking. However, that is because, as you all will be aware, in the vast majority of cases, parking is no longer a police power, so it simply wouldn't be relevant. So I've not found anything I can base that on, but I've not found anything to say that I can't. So this side of it progresses. On the kind of more technical operational aspects of it, which is where a lot of the questions came from the last time I was here, including things like, what are we going to do if they're in a conflict situation? What are they going to wear? How are they going to appear? All these types of things. So firstly, we have had a very successful field test of the equipment that I'm proposing will be issued to the PSVs. Now I detailed this briefly previously, but essentially there is a new generation of handheld speed guns which don't rely on the officer capturing kind of the evidence and then on the speed gun itself and then presenting that evidence in statement form. All of the evidence is captured on HD video recordings. They are extraordinarily reliable. They're also rather expensive, but they are effectively like a handheld version of the speed safety camera vans that you see at the roadside. The key point of that is that it takes out the need to actually stop a vehicle at the roadside and speak to a motorist, which is a key point of where you can sometimes get some conflict. So in relation to driving down the risk to our volunteers, the use of these cameras is absolutely key. So the company supplied us with one. They supplied some training for our special constables who are in the speed team. We tested it for over a month. I went out with it myself. It's absolutely excellent. Cops do like shiny kit, but this was this was excellent. I was rather worried about us dropping it because when I say expensive, there are discussions to be had with the company, particularly if you're buying in bulk, which we won't be, but you're looking in the region of what they quoted me at about £10,000 per unit. And obviously there's some aspects around kind of inflation, what have you. They are not cheap, but they are as close to foolproof in terms of securing evidence and consequently prosecutions as they get. So they're a very useful piece of kit. Moving on in relation to the more of the kind of the logistical and operational stuff. In my search looking for forces that have done something like this, I have been in discussions with Gloucestershire Police, not because they have PSVs who are focusing this way on road safety, but what they do have is a fairly mature scheme they have launched called volunteer PCSOs. So most of you will be familiar with the concept of PCSOs. We have less than we used to, but you will be familiar with what they do. Gloucestershire Police essentially have recreated that entire role, but entirely staffed by volunteers. And they carry out many of the functions which traditionally PCSOs do, albeit without the limited kind of legal powers that the PCSOs have, which, to be perfectly frank, have never really been a core part of their job. This was interesting and useful because they have answered a lot of the questions and explored a lot of the issues which were asked here and which I needed to be able to answer, including what do they actually wear? Do they have access to the Airwaves secure police radios? Do they wear body armor? Do they wear body cams? Do they drive vehicles, etc.? So having looked at what they've done and discussed it with them and looked at some of their work, I have recently brought back kind of everything that I'm speaking tonight. I've recently brought back kind of an updated kind of progress report to my senior managers. So they are fully aware of what it is I'm proposing and are broadly supportive of the direction of travel, just for reassurance. So the updated proposals I brought in terms of where I think we are finally heading with this is that, yes, they will wear uniform. I want that uniform to be as smart as possible. So we are probably looking at white shirt and tie with high-vis jacket, clearly stating on the back that they are police service volunteers. Appropriate headwear looking very similar to what you would see a PCSO wearing, but not so similar that somebody would mistake them on close inspection for a police officer. I will be proposing that they have access to body armor, and I will be proposing that they have access to police radios, partly for reasons of kind of operational efficiency and in large part for reasons of operational safety, because the orange button which sits on the top of our radio is the quickest and surest way of getting support to you quickly. And although I do not envisage this being a particularly confrontational role, I want to sort of lower the risk as far as I can. So my proposal will be that they will be in uniform, clearly identified as volunteers, wearing body armor, wearing a body cam, which is absolutely key, particularly when we're sort of getting to the issue of complaints and what people said, etc., and also capturing evidence of offences, with access to police radios. What I am not proposing at all is that they would have access to the other personal protective equipment, which is standard for police officers, things like incapacitant sprays, baton and handcuff, things like that. That does not form part of my proposal. Indeed, you don't see PCSOs or traffic wardens equipped with that type of thing. In respect to vehicles, my proposal will be that they have access to police vehicles, but not marked police vehicles, on what we term as traditionally as grade 5 access, which is kind of old police shorthand for you can drive a police vehicle under our insurance for police purposes, but you cannot use the emergency equipment, i.e. the lights or the sirens, and you do not have any of the exemptions that police have under the Road Traffic Act, i.e. you can't drive fast and you can't drive through red lights with the blue lights going. The reason for that is that I know a lot of the focus will be Ely, and we can do a lot of this on foot, but the pilot area for the new PSV role is East Cambridgeshire, and many of you, I'm sure, will either live or represent slightly more remote villages where I would hazard a guess that speeding and road safety is a concern there as well. I would like these volunteers to be able to go out into all parts of East Cam, so access to vehicles is key. So subject to them having a full driving license and passing our kind of check run to make sure that they are indeed still competent, as you would expect, my proposal will be that they have access to unmarked but police-owned vehicles in order to be able to do this. In relation to their training and the skills that we want them to have. So I've been in discussion with our partners in the Vision Zero partnership. If you're not familiar with it, Vision Zero is the group which brings together all interested parties around a shared strategy of reducing death and serious injury on our roads. So it includes the police, the NHS, the ambulance service, fire service, local authorities, the county council, the Road Victims Trust, and others. I've been in discussion with the county council on this because they provide a lot of the training and education. So they own that part of the strategy. They have nothing signed and sealed, but they have voiced their strong support for this notion, and indeed would be prepared to come in and deliver some of the educational aspects of their training, particularly on the safer systems approach. I could talk about that for a long time, but in summary, safer systems is the totality of the approach that looks at all of the things that makes accidents, collisions, I should say, more likely to happen, tries to reduce them. So it's kind of the comprehensive approach that we adopt in trying to make things safer. So they would come in and provide the training from that. You might remember from my previous presentation here, part of what I want our volunteers to be able to do is to actually go into schools and colleges and other centres and deliver some of the educational aspects of kind of road policing. It's not just about enforcement. So there is that. We've already discussed the potential training that I've got in terms of some of the really difficult legal aspects of this. And then the more tradecraft and operational and tactical aspects would, of course, be covered by ourselves. And I've spoken to various people about what that would look like in relation to kind of the tradecraft and things like that. There are some capacity issues, which again, I will come on to shortly around what the biggest blocker is, because right now we are recruiting an awful lot of police officers. So our training department, and particularly our officer safety trainers, the people who teach us kind of, how to use handcuffs and that type of thing, and all the unarmed stuff, are a little busy at the moment. However, that will not last forever. So I envisage all of the kind of the operational and tradecraft aspects being policing. So it will be a combination of different experts and agencies delivering what will be some fairly intensive training, likely over a number of weekends, supported by online learning and training on a new platform, which I'm actually developing to allow us to train both our existing police officers and our police service volunteers remotely and a little bit slicker. Again, I could talk about that for a long time, but essentially there will be a platform, we will be using it. So that's the legal aspects, the operational aspects, the training aspects of it. At the end of all that, there will be a list of powers that I'll be proposing to the Chief Constable that we bestow onto these volunteers, including the ability to enforce parking infringements, including dangerous parking, the zigzags and double yellows where appropriate, speeding enforcement, and then potentially, and this is something I'm still exploring more around the practicality of it, but potentially stuff around use of mobile phones and seatbelts as well, where we can do that doesn't involve pulling over vehicles, because a lot of that involves actually stopping cars on routes, and that's just not appropriate. But that's not entirely out of play yet either. So the main blocker, and the reason why I've not come here, with an announcement that they're going out next week and kind of doing a victory lap. The level of access that I require for these volunteers, access to secure police radios, access to secure police ICT systems, in addition to the fact they've actually got police powers, means that they will require a level of vetting which will be broadly on a par of the level of vetting we require of new police officers. As I said a moment ago, we are right now in year 3 of the National Police Uplift Programme, which is the government's commitment to recruit 20,000 new police officers across the country. This I can speak on with some authority because that is actually my day job. This is what I do. I'm currently seconded to the Home Office's project to help deliver our share of the 20,000 police officers for Cambridgeshire and other forces in the Eastern region. What this means is that there are a great number of applicants coming through who require vetting. Vetting is not a straightforward or a short process. To give you a very rough ballpark figure, for what my colleagues would describe as a non-problematic candidate, it takes about 3 months to vet someone. And that's if there aren't any issues. It can be quicker. It depends on individual circumstances, but as a ballpark kind of national figure, that's roughly what you're looking at. We have nationally had hundreds of thousands of applications to join the police because we've got about between 80 and 90% of people do not succeed in actually joining the police. What this means is that there is a great deal of pressure at various points in the system, and we have to prioritize police officers to get them through the system. And vetting, although it comes at kind of the far end of the process, is a very narrow bottleneck. And for obvious reasons, we have prioritized police officers, new joiners coming in first. Next down on the list is transferees, people who want to move between police forces, so they come next. And then we have to vet and re-vet police officers when they move around the force. So for example, if somebody wants to move into one of our units, which is dealing with serious and organized crime and the really worst type of stuff we have to deal with, they will usually require a higher level of vetting, and we have to naturally re-vet people after certain times anyway. You probably, it's not escaped your attention, some of the coverage and the fallout of the horrendous murder of Sarah Everard by a serving police officer. And there has been a lot of discussion around what role vetting did or didn't play into that. I make no comment on that. However, vetting is an extremely hot topic for very good reasons. What does this practically mean? Why am I talking to you about it? It's because police service volunteers sit at the far end of a very long queue, and it is not a case of them being at the back and gradually moving up to the front. They stay at the bottom of the queue
and any new person in any of those categories and some others I mentioned comes in on top, because that's, I don't think I need to explain that too much. I think that's probably common sense as to why we're doing that. Practically speaking, that means that the waiting time for police service volunteers who are new, who are coming in, is months, if not longer. I spoke to a volunteer just on Tuesday who has been waiting 12 months to go through their vetting. It is not ideal, but that's the position we're in. And unfortunately, my ability to influence that is extremely limited, even if I were minded to, which I'm not, because I completely agree with what it is my colleagues are doing and how they're prioritizing it. I think that the pool of people that would be right for this post is quite small. Some of my colleagues disagree with me on that, I should say. They think, indeed speaking to colleagues in the council, they think that there will be an incredible amount of enthusiasm and interest for this. I think that they might be right, but the pool of people that there's a difference between people wanting to do it and me wanting them to do it. And we are looking for very professional, very trustworthy individuals to be able to do this, who can to a large degree be kind of motivated, who can deal with the legal stuff, who can trust with powers and all of these things, and also to be extremely sensible. What I do not want is a deputized vigilante going out and using powers unsensibly. I don't think anybody wants that either. So the pool of people I think I'm looking for is quite small. I do not want to go out, recruit those people, bring them in and have them waiting for 12 months because I think they will lose them. I think they will become disenchanted by it, and then I probably don't get to go out to them again. So what you were probably wondering is, well, when does this blocker end? That is genuinely difficult for me to answer, and I don't want to be tied down an exact date because honestly, it's hard for me to say. What I can give is some reasonably sensible predictions on it. The police uplift program comes to an end on the 31st of March next year. So springtime next year. By that time, touch wood, we will have successfully recruited the 20,000 new police officers. There will be something of a backlog of people who are waiting for vetting and re-vetting behind them, which will need to be cleared, but our vetting teams have got extraordinarily efficient over the course of this, and we put additional resource in behind them. So hopefully that backlog will not take too long. We can start the process of bringing in PSVs again. So I cannot give an exact time. I would hope that we'll be in a position to start bringing in people next year, which gives me a little bit more time to come up with the kind of final proposal and recommendations that I'll be making to the constabulary about exactly what this looks like, and getting the green light for all the things I proposed, and also to deal with some of the outstanding questions around funding and how some of this is financed. I've been asked if I would bring this to the next meeting of the Vision Zero partnership for consideration of it in relation to funding. And I've done a little bit of quiet digging, and I am quietly optimistic that it's something they'll support. The big ticket item being TrueCam devices. I would like at least 1, 2 would be nice. There are some other attendant costs in relation to training, nothing huge, but we're talking sort of reasonable amounts of money. So I have a little bit more time to explore that. So we'll pause and draw breath. Forgive me, I have no idea how much time you allocated me. With your leave, very happy to answer any questions.
Exactly the time.
Exactly. Thank you, Superintendent Sutherland. I mean, that was an incredible with no notes. And I'm sure there are questions from members. So got Councillor Harries first, and
I just want to clarify my understanding of this. You've done extensive research. You have not found any local authority that's using Section 38 powers specifically for parking enforcement. Given the fact that nearly every authority in the country has now committed to civil parking enforcement, is it true to say that there probably will never be another local authority that looks at Section 38 powers specifically for parking enforcement? You don't know how this would be funded, and you don't know when you will be able to train, because as you very rightly said, there are higher priorities. So why did we have this item on the agenda today? I must say I'm struggling to understand.
I don't think the question for Superintendent Solomon is about why we got it in the agenda. But
Okay,
there were,
would
but there
the
were
su-
bits in there that that were perhaps valid
Okay.
questions.
Could the superintendent verbally respond to the requests for clarification that I made there?
Yes, certainly. So in relation to the first part, which was around local authorities and is it likely that anybody else will look to use section 30 in relation to this? I was just probably not, because there's a very small number of local authorities where this would even be possible. If something has been civilianized, it is no longer within the remit of the chief constable to do it. So no, probably de facto the answer to that would be no. It's not necessarily a reason not to do it here, but to strictly answer your question, that would be no. In relation to the second bit around the funding, no, I'm slightly more optimistic than that. The constabulary has funds in order to be able to kind of manage PSVs, and the majority of the things that I'm talking about, do not incur huge amounts of cost. The equipment, the training, etc., training venues, these are things that we can cover. The main cost is around the availability of TrueCams, and that is £10,000 is it's certainly not small money to me. I am quietly optimistic that we would get the support of the partnership in order to be able to fund that, because they have a reasonable pool of money that derives from some of the revenue from safety camera units and enforcement, and that money goes to fund projects that are designed to improve road safety. It tends, and now I'm speaking historically, I've not seen their accounts, so just take this with that health warning. Having done some work over the last few years kind of around this, my observation on the funds that they have available is that it's quite a lot of money to do small things, but not enough money to do really big things. So things like road engineering roundabouts are extraordinarily expensive. A lot of stuff that we seek to do around road safety, things with schools and education stuff, is actually quite expensive, and they've got a quite large amount of money that sits in the middle. So actually, I think bringing something like this, which is kind of mid-priced in terms of road safety, might actually sit quite well with them. So it's not within my gift, and I hope to make a convincing argument to them about why this is a good idea, but that's where I sit in terms of funding. I come whenever I'm invited and asked to give updates, and I'm happy to speak about road safety to anyone at any point, anywhere. So.
Oh, Councillor Goldsack.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you very much for coming today, Superintendent. Most informative. My question is the difference between Ely and the rest of East Cams is of concern. I represent Soham North, and the town of Soham has equipped itself down the years with a very efficient system of CCTV on an awful lot of their major roads. Is there no way that we could extend the use of CCTV for parking enforcement, therefore reducing the need for somebody to walk by and then check that, okay, they've been there for an hour or been there for whatever the allotted time is? That would be a really simple, especially as you said, it's digital technology, it's live, it's 24-hour access. I think that would be a really good thing for us to look at in terms of honing this service in when we go. I would say, though, I do share the concerns voiced from the other side of the training times, because, I think, well, I speak for a lot of people in this room, we're very much excited by the service, but jam tomorrow is no good. We need the service as soon as possible.
So, taking the two bits separately, the use of cameras for road safety enforcement, so CCTV, is quite a technical area, both technically and legally, and I don't want to give you kind of the wrong information. So I say this a little warily. You do see increasing use of CCTV
in relation to things like bus lane enforcement and I think yellow box junction enforcement. Obviously, in relation to speeding, that's well established. I am not aware of anywhere that is using CCTV in relation to parking enforcement. I'm not aware of anywhere, and I strongly suspect that is because there are outside of a small number of occasions where there is absolutely no legal defence to parking somewhere. The vast majority of places there are, and the only way you can ascertain that is by actually being there. I suspect that is why I'm nowhere is doing it to the best of my knowledge. I think if it was possible, somebody would be doing it right now. I would also suspect that were there to be a move to start enforcing parking via the use of cameras, the constabulary would probably prefer that was led by local authorities, not by the constabulary. That's my sense. Nobody's ever asked me that question before, and so I've never asked that question. But if you want my professional opinion, that's where I see coming. I take your point on the delays of training. It is not ideal at all. I would like to be further ahead, but there are some things which are genuinely out of my control. I appreciate that the problem isn't going away and has been here for some time, but it is a problem now and an annoyance of people now. I should have said in my update, I have personally been out and done parking enforcement over the last 12 months to see the lay of the land here in Ely, including down Fore Hill. So I recognise there's a problem. I issued a parking ticket myself down there. I suspect my colleagues in the Central Ticket Office were surprised. What my observation, having done that, because there was kind of purpose in going out and doing it, was to try and get a little bit of a sense of what the actual problem is. And the vast majority of vehicles which I came across, primarily down Fore Hill, but I did foot patrol all around Ely, the vast majority of people parking on double yellows and Fore Hill were blue badge holders. So obviously they're allowed to be there. That's fine, which again is kind of part of the reason why camera enforcement of it, is problematic. The vehicles that shouldn't have been parked there were all in some way connected to the businesses down there. It was not a case of a tourist coming to Ely to the day to see Ely Cathedral, parking on Fore Hill and double yellows and leaving. It was staff, managers, people dropping off things for staff there or dropping people off, etc. Which leads me to think that actually this is probably a routine part of how some people go about their business in relation to parking. It is not a general problem. What that means is that we probably don't need to catch these people too often, that occasional enforcement and catching them sometimes so they are aware that this is something that will happen to you if you keep running your luck every day might be sufficient, which makes me probably a little more optimistic when I was last here and last asked about it in terms of can this be successful? Yeah, I think it can be. In the interim, if you would like me to direct my colleagues in the Special Constabulary who kind of do the road safety, the new team that we've had for the last few months, to do some parking enforcement both down Fore Hill and in Soham in the interim, I would be very happy to do so. In fact, I shall go out again myself and do some because I share your frustration and I shall do my best with it.
All right,
I think that was both parts of the
it was, thank you. If I can just have a reply on that. I understand that the Met use CCTV, might be worth following up. Certainly do around Waltham Forest because I know somebody that's been fined there via CCTV. So I'm just saying, as a development of this, if you had the ability to do that in most towns and villages in East Cambridgeshire, then you could spend more of the focus on the speeding aspects as opposed to the parking. That was what I was thinking. Thank you.
I take the point. I will try and dig further. I will try and dig further.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent. I've got Councillor Inskip, then I've got Councillor Hunt afterwards.
Yeah, I've got a question, but I'll just make a comment on that because I think you'll find the Waltham Forest one is a civil parking enforced or civil powers, so it's not the Met. And it's the same with if you're in a if you go into a box junction or so on, you'll get the enforcement is by the appropriate London borough. and you can, and I know there are councils that do, at least for example, Nottinghamshire has a CCD equipped car that they put they use to enforce parking around schools and bus stops and so on. And with the full implementation of Part 4 of the Traffic Management Act, that 2004, and there are other moving traffic regulation offences that those authorities that have civil parking enforcement can take on, that often the police don't have resources for. But I think that comes back to this whole debate about civil parking enforcement, which I know is, we've had that before, so I'm not going to go through that again. What my questions were, so I'm just trying to understand that the process in terms of volunteers. So you'd have to have some sort of process of inviting or bringing volunteers forward. Presumably you'd be looking potentially at things like those speed watch groups and other people who have that, let's say, motivation already. So they'd need to be vetted, trained, then kitted out with the uniform. So what's the, let's say, the rough times would you expect to complete that process once these blockages that you had turned are resolved? Once you've got a volunteer, to be effective, what sort of time commitment would they need to give? And for a district the size of East Cambridgeshire, what is let's say the minimum viable number of volunteers to make a scheme that works?
Okay, thank you. I'll work backwards. So I'm looking at 6 initially, which I think is probably the minimum I need to make this kind of economically viable in terms of bringing in the trainers, and also to provide kind of a little bit of resilience and people drop out and etc. I think anything less wouldn't work. In terms of minimum hours, I'm going to model this on what we do for our special constabulary to sort of gain sort of a return on investment, where we ask for an average of 16 hours, 16 hours a month. So 4 hours a week. I nearly said 16 hours a week. That's a lot. 16 hours a month, 4 hours a week, accepting that might not be every week, but it kind of averages out. That is, we don't hold people iron to that. That's in the ballpark of what I'm looking at. In terms of the process, so the type of person I'm looking for is kind of what you alluded to. I think we will be looking at our existing volunteers, particularly in community speed watch groups, but also at potentially retired police officers who kind of retain sort of an interest and a passion for road safety. Obviously, there would be some advantages from that, and then slightly broader sort of for people who are possibly retired professionals who might be looking who have sort of a passion and interest in this area, but who for various reasons maybe physical limitations or age aren't actually interested in the special constabulary. But it's closer to the special constabulary than it is community speed watch in terms of the level, which is why I think that the pool might be a little bit low. So the actual advertising and recruitment process, kind of the selection process, would be fairly quick. I think that would be achieved in a matter of weeks. I think we would get we've got very good communication channels. I would also draw upon kind of the promotion of it with yourselves here in the council. I strongly suspect there'd be media interest, and consequently, I think that we would get the word out there quite quick. How many applications we get in, opinion differs on, but I don't think it would be that difficult, and I don't think it would cost us any money to actually sort of do that. So I think we would be able to do that in a short time frame, a matter of weeks, not months, certainly. The training, that's still to be determined because I need to write the curricula in full, but probably, and I'm just ballparking for you, but probably 6 weeks over a number of weekends, maybe slightly shorter depending on how intensive we can make it, but probably between a month and 6 weeks, weekends and evenings. That's probably roughly in terms of what we're looking at. Equipping people doesn't take any time at all. We order this stuff in well in advance. We just build that in as part of the training. So that's no part. And none of that starts,
none of the training or equipping starts until we've vetted people. That's the thing. So the process would be advertising, application, selection first. The final part of selection is putting through vetting. That's the bit that can take some time, which is that's the start date. And then actually bringing people in and training people. And so from them having passed vetting, let's assume they pass vetting and we get them in within about the next week or so after that, probably about 6 weeks from then to them actually being deployed for the first time, there or thereabouts. I'm being slightly vague because it's still, but I think you were looking for a broad time scale. That's what it would be.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent. I've got Councillor Hunt next, and I've seen no other hands. I'm looking at drawing this because I'm conscious of time after Councillor Hunt. So thank you.
Yes, I won't take it very long. I'd just like you to understand that we are in favour and supportive and appreciative of what you're doing. You've explained there's a lot more to it than I initially thought. I mean, your equipment, your training, your uniforms, your recruitment and budget. So well done and thank you. And I'd like you to realise that we desperately want you here. We appreciate what you're doing, and just keep up the good work and thank you. You don't need to reply, just nod and smile.
I will simply say that I have been left in no doubt of how keen people are for me to make progress. I do understand, but thank you.
Well, thank you, Superintendent. Sutherland, sorry, I may went back. Is there anything you've said? So you've given us so much information, but okay, well, you're welcome to stay, or if you want to, or you're welcome to disappear and enjoy the rest of your evening. Okay, thank you. Okay, well, thank you for that, members. Very informative session. I move on to item 7, which is to receive petitions, and I believe there are none. So I now move on to item 8, which is the notices of motions under Procedure Rule 10 and little one, cost of living. There is an amended motion, which it should be on all of your tables. So if I can ask Councillor Dupre.
As a point of order, I believe it is not an amended motion. I believe it is an altered motion. There is a distinction.
I'm happy to take your correction there, but it becomes a substantive motion, but yes. Okay, Councillor Bailey, over to you as the proposer of the motion.
Pleased to move the motion, Chairman.
And seconder.
Happy to second, Chair, and I reserve my right.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Bailey, do you wish to speak to the motion?
I would very much like to, thank you. Yes, so it is an altered motion that we have on the table, I think for reasons that will probably, if not already obvious, become obvious. We have got high inflation and lower economic growth. They are a global issue. They're the result of serious global economic shocks, including COVID and Putin's outrageous invasion of Ukraine, and increasing global energy demand. From autumn 2021, the government has taken multiple steps to support households and businesses, targeting support to the lowest incomes households. And some of the included items in that are reducing the universal credit taper from 63% to 55%. That's saving 1.9 million working families an average of £1,000 per year. The increase of the national living wage by 6.6%, it's gone up to £9.50, freezing fuel duty for the 12th year in a row, launching the Household Support Fund, which is 1.5 billion across the country, £400 energy bills discount, which is applied automatically. People will be around in this room will be knowing that's happening now, and that comes automatically through people's energy supplier in 6 instalments between October and March. £150 cash rebate for homes in council tax bands A to D, which is 80% of all households. 144 million discretionary funding for local authorities to support those that aren't eligible for the council tax rebate. and £650 payments for people on means tested benefits, £300 pensioner payments and £150 for those on disability benefits on top of that. An increase in the threshold at which workers start paying national insurance contributions, moving it from £9,880 to £12,570. 5p on fuel duty cut, which is worth 5 billion, and a cut to the employer and employee national insurance rates and scrapping of the health and social care levy. That's an average savings for households of £330. And on energy bills, obviously, we've got the energy price cap guarantee currently set to last until April, saving the average household £1,000 a year. And the energy price guarantee for non-domestic customers for 6 months. In addition, payments for people that use heating oil or liquefied petroleum gas as well. In August 2022, the Lib Dems nationally called for bold and urgent action to help families pay their bills and heat their homes this winter. They proposed a £39 billion package to cancel the expected increase in the Ofgem price cap, and they proposed an uncosted cut in VAT, which I see emerges again later this evening. The measures under the Johnson government equate to £37 billion of support, and the energy price cap for 6 months under the current Prime Minister equates to £60 billion. So there's £97 billion of support going in to help people through this crisis period. This council, of course, is also working hard to support our communities through this difficult time. Our cost of living dedicated webpage details the things we're doing in the short and medium term, and it includes masses of information, details of drop-in events, debt and money management advice, support with energy bills, including access to emergency vouchers, help with food, mental health and wellbeing support, and information about warm hubs. And our housing and community advice team has stepped up massively, and together with our partners are running drop-ins, supporting warm hubs and helping people to access financial and health and wellbeing support. And our council is also supporting people to access funding to undertake millions of pounds worth of home energy efficiency improvements. We didn't need to convene a summit to carry out this activity. It's already been happening and has been happening for some time. And our motion today also calls for the immediate allocation of £10,000 pot of funding towards a cost of living support fund, which will be managed by our housing and community advice team to enable them to provide last resort support should the household support fund and other methods have failed to stabilise people's situations. And we should also recognise, Chairman, the modest but cumulative contribution that our last resort approach to council tax makes to helping household budgets. Other councils in our area, including the Liberal Democrat-led County Council, have increased council tax by the maximum amount allowed. We've frozen the East Cambs element of council tax for 9 years in a row, and subject to the detail of the government's budget announcements on the 31st of October, we are very hopeful and minded to do so again in 2023-24. If we can, we should, and if we can, we will. I'm proud of the support that even through the difficult times the government is currently facing, despite all the problems, I'm proud of the support that the government has put in, and I'm proud of our officers in this council for all that they are doing.
Councillor Bailey, that was virtually spot on 5 minutes. So I was just about to. Members, Councillor Dupre.
Thank you, Chair. Well, what can I say to the party opposite? Life comes at you fast sometimes, doesn't it? In the ongoing slow motion car crash going on at Westminster, it was exceedingly courageous of the party opposite to put anything on paper showing any reliance whatsoever on any financial announcement made by what I suppose we must still continue to call the government. The motion in front of us is an oratorio of praise to the economic policies of the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Kwasi Kwarteng, and his Prime Minister, Liz Truss. It's a shame they're not around to hear it, or maybe not.
A point of order, Chairman.
Yes, Councillor Ben.
Most of what I said was referring to previous incumbents, actually.
Okay.
I'm not sure that's a point of order.
Yeah, okay.
We're already on to the next Chancellor of the Exchequer, and the Prime Minister would have been pushing up the daisies if she hadn't nailed herself to her perch for another week. The announcement by the previous Chancellor and the soon-to-be ex-Prime Minister of £45 billion of unfunded tax cuts for corporations and millionaires led to chaotic consequences, with the Bank of England having to step in to prevent the collapse of pension funds. As a result,
Thank you. It's not a point of order, but yeah, okay, yeah.
I'm sorry, councillor Austin is confused. As a result, the previous Chancellor was sacked and the current Chancellor's next fiscal event will be brought forward to appropriately Halloween. We already know that the current Chancellor is suggesting that £60 billion of cuts will now have to be found. We do not know, however, whether he will still be the Chancellor by 31st October or who will be the Prime Minister, or what either of those post holders, whoever they may be, will decide to do next. The party opposite has had to alter its motion to reflect the decision of the Chancellor of the Week, Jeremy Hunt, to restrict the energy price guarantee to just 6 months instead of 2 years. It's also chosen to sound a note of caution on its own plans to freeze council tax, while it waits to hear who is the next Prime Minister, who is their Chancellor, what they both have up their sleeves, and how many of their Halloween tricks will be played on local government. Meanwhile, local families here in East Cambridgeshire are facing the coming winter with dread. If they have mortgages, 6-month energy price guarantees and even council tax increases will be totally overshadowed by the sudden and severe increase in interest rates resulting from the turmoil unleashed on this country, putting their homes under threat. The fourth paragraph of this motion welcomes the maximisation of use of fossil fuels. There are strong environmental reasons why this is dangerous nonsense. A major study published last month stated we were on the brink of crossing multiple climate tipping points due to the extent of the rise in global temperatures. The report notes that this will be disastrous for people across the world. In these circumstances, to call as this motion does for a doubling down on our reliance on fossil fuels is disastrous. What happened to the climate emergency this council declared in 2019? Perhaps the clue is in the decision by the party opposite at our last meeting to reject our proposal to sign the Nature and Climate Declaration. But even if the party opposite is not interested in the environment, their enthusiasm for redoubling reliance on fossil fuels make no sense, even in financial terms. Just a month ago, the chair of the Independent Committee on Climate Change, former Conservative Environment Minister John Gummer, joined the chair of the National Infrastructure Committee on writing to the now soon-to-be ex-Prime Minister Liz Truss. They warned her that focusing on fossil fuels would not solve the energy problems faced by this country. They said renewables are the cheapest form of electricity generation. Onshore wind and solar have the potential to be deployed fastest and thus reduce our reliance on natural gas sooner. Gas and oil take years to come on stream, are traded at global prices and are currently making massive profits for fossil fuel giant companies, the very same companies whose windfall profits Liz Truss is protecting while imposing new taxes on clean energy. We cannot support the enthusiasm expressed by the party opposite for increased reliance on fossil fuels. Residents in East Cambridgeshire and up and down the country are sick and tired of the Game of Thrones being played at Westminster and fearful of the consequences of this total financial disarray for their families, their jobs, their lives and their homes. Thanks to the Conservative Party, this country is the laughingstock of the world. It has become effectively ungovernable. Its international reputation has been trashed and the living standards of its people massively reduced. There is nothing to celebrate here. We need a general election now. We cannot support this motion.
Thank you, councillor Dupre. I've got councillor Inskip and then councillor Ebery. Oh, sorry.
Could I ask, I totally understand that councillors wish to get everything they need to say within 5 minutes, but I hardly heard that. And if speakers could be mindful of those who have hearing problems in this chamber, I would be really grateful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, councillor Ebery. I note that, but obviously, yeah. I know. All right, councillor Inskip.
Thank you, Chair. I'll do my best. So this motion should have been withdrawn. It wasn't written to bring the cost of living emergency to the fore, to consider how we can best help the residents who are struggling in our own district. It was written to shore up a failing Prime Minister, and now ex-Prime Minister. In the first paragraph, it seeks to lay the blame of all of our current economic problems at the door of the COVID pandemic and Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Global issues, said Councillor Bailey, but no one, least of all the residents of our district, are going to be fooled by such a claim. To quote the ex-Bank of England Deputy Governor Charlie Bean, it is disingenuous to say it's a global phenomenon. It is not. We've moved from looking not too dissimilar from the US or Germany as a proposition to lend to, but to looking more like Italy and Greece. The country has been humiliated on the international stage, and that humiliation is continuing day by day, even hour by hour. But it isn't a game. The poorest pensioners and families are being made to pay for the government's economic mistakes and recklessness. For week after week over the summer, with the looming hike in energy price, in the energy price cap, we heard nothing from the Conservative government. Millions were faced with a financial emergency. The government priorities were elsewhere. To quote money for saving experts, Martin Lewis in August, what we're facing here is a financial emergency that risks lives. He went on to say, I accept the point that Boris Johnson is running a zombie government and he can't do much. But the two leadership candidates, one of them will be our Prime Minister, obviously was and gone, they will need to get together in the national interests. They did not. We finally heard something in September. On the 23rd of September, we had the fiscal event. In reality, a budget introducing £45 billion worth of unfunded tax cuts. The headline one, a priority, the abolition of the 45% top rate tax to those lucky enough to earn over £150,000, a tiny fraction of residents that we represent. Now, I'm not going to go through the weeks of U-turns we've had since then, but all we're left with after that mini budget is bigger mortgage payments and still bigger banking bonuses. The 2-year energy guarantee lasted just a few weeks. That was U-turned on 3 days ago. And now what is going to happen come the end of March next year, residents will see the £66 per month discount disappear, the end of the 6-month universal price guarantee, that goes, and a new price cap widely expected to be significantly higher than we're seeing today. And in the meantime, oil and gas producers are raking in profits on the back of Putin's law. So what does this motion offer as a solution? Just one watered down resolution, the possibility of a council tax freeze. In the midterm financial plan, it talked about a £5 rise in the council tax for the year. If that freeze, only minded to do, went through, that's a saving of 42 pence a month to residents in a Band D property. 42 pence a month when food and energy bills are rocketing, homeowners are seeing mortgage payments rise by hundreds of pounds. Is there any better example of how out of touch the members are opposite with the cost of living prices that people are dealing with? And those members are part of that tiny electorate that imposed the ex-Prime Minister Trust on this country of 67 million people. As members of the Conservative Party, they are part of that tiny electorate that brought with us Tressonomics, that brought with us recklessness and chaos. Now that particular chapter is buried today, but what will the new choice, will it be any better? You know, this isn't a way to run a whelk store. It certainly isn't a way to run a nation. We should set aside this motion. We don't need self-congratulatory motions. We don't need another pass the parcel to the next MP who wants to put themselves forward as the choice of Conservative Party members to run our country. What we need for the residents in this district and the country wide is a general election now, so that people can actually vote for the person who's making those choices and imposing those policies on us all. We need an election now, and we need that to happen forthwith.
Thank you, Councillor Ince. Again, virtually just under 5 minutes. Well done. Councillor Hunt, yeah, Councillor Hunt, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. You know, I'm actually very proud of what this council does to help local people. You know, we're not really concerned too much here with what goes on in Stoke-on-Trent and Tunbridge Wells. We're considering what's going on in Littleport and Soham and Wilburton and Ely and the villages round here. We've got our responsibilities to 70,000 odd people, and I believe we look after them very well. I'm proud of the fact that we have a real one-to-one conversation with people who are in difficulty and of course are feeling the strain. But I think our staff and the policies we have are really a credit. And I don't think it's a bad thing to have a goal for not putting the council tax up for 10 years. I think it's a very reasonable goal. And I'm getting a little bit tired of people just opposing what we're doing. I don't know whether it's jealousy or whether quite what it is, but it's certainly an attempt to score some pretty irrelevant political points. I must thank Councillor Insip. I could hear what he was saying. He spoke very clearly, as opposed to the mumbling, which I assumed was criticism of the Conservatives, which came from his co-pilot. Anyway, I'd just like to say, I think you've got it wrong. I think you do this council no credit by just moaning and trying to score cheap points. And, you know, it's very easy for you to criticise the people at Westminster. You haven't got very many people there to make a mistake, have you? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. I've got Councillor Harris next and I've got Councillor Kane after that. Thank you.
Thanks. I wanted to say three things, really. The first one, a reflection on what it's been like to be on this council. Because the thing that surprised me right from the start was a sense of self-congratulation that had to go into every motion, which worries me. It just worries me. I don't like complacency, and I feel this breeds complacency, and it also is very bad for governance. What happens when, and you substantially rewrote this motion, so it's much less extreme than it was. But when I read it, I thought, this keeps you in your comfort zone. It doesn't encourage you to test ideas, to try out new things, or to learn and grow. And this greatly concerns me. And when you get to the substantial proposals, the analysis, if you like, that you bring forward, it bothers me a lot more. In the F&A committee, I can remember over the past 3 years being concerned about risk, because there is one topic that you will not touch because it's taboo. That topic is Brexit. We've seen so many statistics recently that show, for example, though our economy was damaged by COVID, every European and every G7 economy has actually got back to where they were before COVID and ahead, except for one, just us. It's the same with your very bold mention of Vladimir Putin. Why did you do that, given the fact that the Conservative Party has taken more in donations from former close associates of Putin than any other party in Europe except for Hungary, and I believe Cyprus? It's not Putin, it's not COVID, it's Brexit. It's the topic that you will not talk about. Why has our economy been damaged? It's Brexit. Why are our exports down 16%? It's Brexit. Why is our economy 5% smaller according to the OBR? It's Brexit. And my point, related to what I was saying before, is if you will not analyze correctly, you don't understand what's happening to you, and therefore you can't formulate policies at work. The sense in the previous administration, the previous national government, that by cutting taxes, you get growth, is a bit like being, I don't know, a 17th century doctor saying, oh, this patient looks sick, we must double the leeches. It's what you do when you don't know how things work. And when you don't critically examine them and allow other policies to be considered. And here we are. I don't want to go through the litany. You've heard that, it's been read into the record, all the things we don't like about government policy, you know that. And I don't want to be, you know, bitchy about it, because oddly enough, I've actually grown to have a certain affection for some of you. You know, we're all decent people who want to do the best, but if you will not look the facts squarely in the face, how can you come up with policies that will actually work? And if you're so intent on patting yourselves on the back for all the things that have been done, where is this sense that maybe we could be doing better and should be trying harder? My final point, which has been touched on, is, sorry to put it like this, but it's all your fault. It's people like you who have helped the Conservative Party move so far to the right that I don't recognize it. And my family is all Tories. My mother was chair of of a constituency association for many, many years. And I had no problem with that. She had no problem with me. She was a district council, solid Tory on every side. I know that in her last years, she was extremely unhappy with what she saw as infiltration by UKIPers and people from the extreme right. I'm old enough to remember when there was a scare in the Labour Party about Trotskyist infiltration in the early 80s. Do you know what? They were strong enough to kick them out and deal with that. But you were so keen on being in power that you've allowed the right to inhabit you and to turn you into something that's no longer quite the Conservative Party we used to know, and if not love, at least tolerate as our neighbours. And it troubles me. So I don't want to witter on about policies and about the government and so on, everything else.
You can wind up now.
I'm concerned about you as people and as a group, and I think you need to have a good look at yourselves and just reflect and think again, if you'd be so kind.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Harris. I've got Councillor Kane and then Councillor Goldsack.
Thank you, Chair. This motion is unbelievably complacent. It spends a lot of time giving a paean of praise to the government for all the work it's done. It doesn't face up to the huge, huge extra costs that our residents are facing. The leader of the council boasted that minimum wage has been put up by 6.6%. Well, I've news for her. Inflation is 10%. And actually on food, it's nearer 15%. So that's a real terms cut for the very lowest paid people in our society. That's something to be ashamed of, not proud of. And we're complacent about what we're doing as a council. We talk about our housing advice service and the community advice bus. Well, the community advice bus claims that on its network is Bottisham, Burwell, Swaffham Prior and Wesley Waterless. But on its timetable, it's only got Sutton, Soham and Littleport. It isn't coming to my part of the district. And believe me, I have asked when it is coming and I've not been given an answer. So that's complacent. It's not providing the service it says it provides. And it was all put there as a shabby deal that led to the closure of the Citizens Advice Bureau in Ely. Something which would really be helping our residents now if it was still there, with independent, reliable advice to people. And it's just shocking that they don't admit to any of their errors. It's also in denial, trying to blame COVID and Vladimir Putin for everything. Everybody knows it was that ludicrous mini budget. Even their fellow Tory MPs, such as Robert Halfon, who says the government has looked like libertarian jihadists and treated the whole country as kind of laboratory mice on which to carry out ultra free market experiments. The result of that? Interest rates going sky high, the pound sinking, which means we have to pay more for everything we import. So it's this government's fault that we're in the mess that we're in, and this is utterly complacent and in denial. It even goes so far as to thank the government for the significant amount of work it's been doing. It spent the summer saying, oh, we can't answer those questions yet, you'll have to wait till there's a new leader, while they faffed around with their own internal election. And then no sooner did they give us the new leader than she was spending all her time fighting for her political career. We now know she's lost that fight. She hasn't been concerned about people and how to manage their finances. And this energy price guarantee, they are still paying twice as much as they had to pay last year, and it only protects them until the 31st of March. This isn't giving them security or any kind of help, real significant help with their problems. And then the real thing that really gets me about this motion is praising the idea that we increase domestic energy production through North Sea oil and gas. Oh, they heard nothing over the last few years. There's a climate emergency out there. And if we keep burning fossil fuels, we are going to cause more and more problems. There's already starvation in Somalia, nearly famine in Somalia. That's largely due to climate change, and they want to keep pouring out more and more fossil fuels and burning them and making the situation worse. That's utterly unacceptable. And there's nothing in here about helping people sensibly minimize their fuel use through insulation and other forms of energy reduction. This is utterly complacent. It offers very, very little to our local residents. It doesn't accept the problems that this government and this council have caused. And I cannot but agree with people who've spoken earlier. The only solution for this country is a general election, get a government who knows what it's doing, and get proper help for people for what is a really frightening time. I'm sick of all my residents. I'm not sick of them, I'm sick of hearing from them. I'm sick of hearing from them the problems that they are facing, the worries they're facing about how they're going to pay their rent, how they're going to pay their mortgage, how they're going to feed their kids, how they're going to heat their houses. People are seriously, really, really worried about this. And this motion does absolutely nothing to address those worries. So I shall be voting against it. And I'm utterly shocked that the Conservatives opposite think that this is a suitable answer to what is an emergency for people.
Thank you, councillor Kane. Again, virtually spot on 5 minutes. This is getting good. Councillor Goldsack.
I'll mess that up, Chairman. I won't be 5 minutes.
I didn't mean that you had to go on longer than you
No,
need
that's
to.
fine.
No.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Councillor Harry said something and it touched me, and I think he's absolutely right. You know, there's more in common in this room than we've got against. All right. And I often think sometimes we should fight for that more. But let me tell you, right, we're in Ely tonight. We're at the East Cambs District Council. I'm not responsible for Brexit. I'm not responsible for Truss. I'm not responsible for the Ukraine invasion. I'm not responsible for the right wing of conservatism. I'm not. I tell you what I'm responsible for, doing all I can for the residents of Soham North in East Cambridgeshire and Soham North and Isleham at County Council. That's what I'm elected for, and that's what I work for. So I am helping them sort out bills because they know how to pay council tax, sort out all the other good stuff. It's fascinating. I mean, you know, we all use social media. We all use different means of communication. I've had 2 or 3 people contact me tonight about what the police officer superintendent was saying about other things like this. I read the last 2 or 3. They thought I was in London. Come on, people, come on. Let's remain a bit of perspective on this, right? A little bit of perspective right through from both sides of the hall, But come on, you know, the tirade in the last 20 minutes, can I just leave you one other last little bit of advice? And it's a request from me, please. Just a simple request, right? Do not fall into the trap of the national press and everybody else of tarring everybody that wears a certain badge as being just like every other person that wears that badge. Because I'm telling you now, they're not. Okay? That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Goldsack. I'm seeing no other hands, in which case I go to the seconder of the motion, councillor Huffer.
Thank you, Chair. I have to say, I thought I was witnessing auditions or selection panel addresses by the 4 members opposite who were speaking. It would appear to me as if they were as a rallying cry and as I say, auditioning for their own Liberal Democrat potential MPs. I look forward to your efforts and you know, who knows? And it's a shame that some of the members opposite don't spend a little bit more time looking after their residents instead of carping on about what we are or national government isn't or isn't doing. I had a resident contact me and I quote, "The 2 district councillors are very good," this was to do with waste, interesting enough, "very good at bemoaning a service that is still doing a good job, rather than praise the work of the workforce who are working tirelessly and help come up with a solution." I won't name the 2 district councillors, but just say that, you know, they need to start looking after their residents and not worrying so much about what's going on in Westminster. And this administration continues to do the increasingly important job of finding ways to help the most vulnerable residents, while also finding the means to be financially prudent to ensure that our share of the council tax remains as low as possible. One of the members opposite referred to our ability to keep our council tax low as a fetish at a meeting recently. It's not a fetish, but a realization that it's not our job to spend residents' money willy-nilly. Unlike some of the members opposite, we would rather allow people to keep their money in their pockets rather than increase council tax and immediately put half of it into reserves. This administration, I really feel that it is more important that our officers are offering practical solutions to residents rather than attending summits and declaring emergencies. We need to be able to address our residents and listen to them and stop worrying about what's happening in Westminster. We are in East Cambs. I'm concerned about my residents. I'm not concerned about what's going on in Westminster. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, councillor Huffer. I now move to the proposer of the motion to sum up.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I will just address a few of the comments that have been made. Councillor Harries referred to the fact that he didn't think the UK economy had been damaged by COVID or Putin. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't know what planet Councillor Harries.
Councillor Bailey.
I did not say that. I said that the other economies had actually recovered from COVID and we had not.
Okay.
I think Councillor Harries needs to look at the inflation rates of other economies across the globe, and he will see for himself that this is a global issue, and the idea that Putin's war in Ukraine is not having a negative impact on the UK economy and other global economies is just ridiculous. In terms of energy independence, you will note the careful use in the motion of the words maximising domestic energy production. It is absolutely right that the UK moves as quickly as it possibly can to 100% energy independence. And if that requires short-term use of North Sea oil and gas, that is vastly preferable to being reliant on the gas taps from Russia. Absolutely it is. But this country, make no mistake, has made rapid moves towards renewables. We are leading the way in the use of our renewable energies in the domestic market, absolutely leading the way. This country is first and foremost in that. I'm really proud of this country's performance in that area. So do I seek to blame the UK economy's issues on COVID and Putin? Yes, of course, they're contributory factors. Councillor Kane talked about the fact that there is nothing in here about energy installations. I don't think she's read it properly. One of the bullet points talks absolutely about the work that we are doing through our energy advice officers to access grant funding to undertake energy efficiency measures in East Cambridgeshire homes. Millions are going into East Cambridgeshire homes to improve energy efficiency measures. We're doing it. Other local authorities are massively struggling on that front. We are forging ahead. So that is in there. But first, most importantly, we are focused on our residents. We have our community advice team. It is out there doing a great job. If the community bus needs to go to new locations, it is available. And if you are struggling to access that, for goodness sake, you can escalate that to officers. All members know that if they are struggling to get a response on that, they can escalate it.
Councillor Bailey, sorry, Councillor Kane.
Point of information, I have escalated to officers several times.
Well, we will definitely take that up. I will take that up with senior staff. We are supporting warm hubs across the district. We're providing responsive, immediate information and advice and support and access to funding for people. We are the Liberal Democrat contribution towards this issue locally is to have raised council tax at the county council by the maximum amount allowed legally. And we all know that raising council tax at the county council raids the pockets of people across East Cambridgeshire by the most. East Cambs element of council tax is only responsible for about 7 or 8% of the bill. It is the county council that takes money by force from the pockets of people in East Cambridgeshire. They knew this cost of living crisis was here. They voted to raise council tax by the maximum and put half of that money that they raised into the bank account of Cambridgeshire County Council. That is the Liberal Democrat contribution towards the cost of living crisis for our residents in East Cambridgeshire. In contrast, this council has frozen its share of council tax for 9 years in a row. That's not about a £5 a year. The cumulative impact of that is hundreds of pounds for our residents. We don't do it by some sort of obsession. We do it because we raise council tax as a last resort. And we have brought in other very efficient means that have supported our medium-term financial plan over a long period of time now, at some criticism from the party opposite, but not criticism in February this year when they were happy to say that they wanted a council tax freeze this year. They wanted it at East Cambs, they didn't do it at the county council. So this council has an absolute record of supporting our residents through council tax, which is one of the small things that we can actually do. And tonight we've put down a motion
Can I
here
ask you
that
to sum up now?
talks
please, Councillor?
about a new cost of living support fund. And if the party opposite refuses to support this motion, let's be clear, they are voting against a brand new fund that will immediately be available to our housing and community advice team to support our residents that are falling through the gaps with an option of last resort to give them food vouchers, energy vouchers, financial support. And if they vote against our motion, they are voting against that practical financial support for our residents. Be clear.
Right, thank you, members. So we now go to the vote on this. Can I ask all those members who, sorry,
Could I ask for a recorded vote, please?
so Tracy, when you're ready.
When I call your name, can you say whether you're voting for, against or abstaining on the altered motion? Councillor Christine Ambrose Smith. For. Councillor David Ambrose Smith.
For.
Councillor Sue Austin. For. Councillor Anna Bailey.
For.
Councillor Ian Bovingdon.
For.
Councillor David Brown. For. Councillor Charlotte Kane. Councillor Lorna Dupre.
Against.
Councillor Lavinia Edwards. For. Councillor Liz Every. Councillor Mark Goldsack.
For.
Councillor Simon Harries.
Against.
Councillor Julia Huffer. For. Councillor Bill Hunt.
For.
Councillor Mark Inskip.
Against.
Councillor Alec Jones.
Against.
Councillor Alan Sharp.
For.
Councillor Amy Starkey. Councillor Lisa Stubbs. For. Councillor Paola Trimarco.
Abstain.
Councillor Joe Webber. For. Councillor Alison Whelan. Councillor Christine Whelan. Councillor Gareth Wilson.
Against.
So the motion is carried by 15 votes in favour to 8 votes against and 1 abstention.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. I move on now to motion 8(2), the cost of living emergency, which is an motion proposed by Councillor Inskip and seconded by Councillor Kane. If you want to introduce the proposed.
Yeah,
Do you want
thank
to-
you, Chair. And I've
Sorry,
got-
do you want to reserve your right to speak, Councillor Kane? Yes, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and I've got an altered motion, so we've gone through that process before, so I'll propose this motion and then we can circulate. I don't know if this altered motion has been circulated or.
It hasn't done so far. If we can have a copy, we can get copies made and circulated.
Right, okay. Okay, so
Excuse me, point of order.
Yes, Councillor Bailey.
My understanding is that altered motions have to be given in 24 hours notice.
Decided not to work, sorry. Under procedure rule 10.6, any amendment to a motion with notice has to be given 24 hours notice. But once that has been moved and seconded, you then come into the normal rules of debate, which come under section 12. And under 12.6, it does allow the mover of a motion to amend that with either on their own right or with the permission of their seconder.
Thank you, Chair. Can I?
Yeah.
Prefer to just delay.
Yeah, I'm just thinking to
Okay.
allow, can we just delay it slightly so for a small adjournment, so members get the opportunity to see what your altered motion is? I think that's probably reasonable. Yeah. So we'll just pause for as long as we need to. Sorry, apologies. Didn't have a mic on. I just felt that was important that every member had a copy of the altered motion. So it's over to you, councillor Inskip, to present the altered motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this motion is intended to recognise the severity of the cost of living emergency facing our country and specifically the residents in East Cambridgeshire that we represent. Unlike the previous motion, this motion doesn't seek to heap praise or criticism on a national government, nor does it seek to apportion blame or obfuscate blame, but instead it's intended to look at the issues and the consequences of the cost of living emergency on residents and to offer practical steps that we can take either as a council directly to address the impact on residents or to work with or to lobby others for effective action. So let me start by summarising where we are. A crisis of the like we've not seen in decades. Annual price inflation was confirmed yesterday at 10.1%, a level not seen for over 40 years. In April, Ofgem increased the energy price cap by 54%. At the start of this month, energy prices increased by a further 27%. That's even after the government measures. And over a period of just 6 months, the average tariff for the average household has increased from £1,222 a year to £2,500 a year. That's a near doubling, even after taking into account the government action. There's been much debate in this week about the government's approach to the pension triple lock for 23-24. On Monday, the Chancellor wasn't going to honour it. On Wednesday, the Prime Minister was. On today, she's gone. But just to be clear, the motion is talking about the existing triple lock, the triple lock that was decided in the last financial year to apply for this year. The government didn't honour the triple lock. And what that means in practice to East Cambridge's 18,000 pensioners is they've seen a rise of just 3.8% in their state pensions this year, instead of the 8.3% that would have come under the triple lock formula, a rise well below the rate of inflation, and therefore a real terms cut, costing pensioners hundreds of pounds a year. We're seeing also, the continuing and growing use of food banks in East Cambridgeshire, with nearly 3,000 food parcels distributed in 2021-22. And in addition, people living in rural areas such as ours are disproportionately affected by fuel price increases because of poor public transport, and we've seen the problems with that recently, the longer distances they travel to reach work, education, and health services. So there should be no doubt there's a serious crisis, a cost of living emergency, and that's why I'm proposing that the council recognises that by declaring a cost of living emergency this evening, something many councils have already done. And once we've done that, we should look at what we can do to help those people we represent. The motion proposes that we ask the Chief Executive to write to relevant government ministers and our local MPs to ask for urgent action at government level. And what we propose, we just propose some ideas, but I'm happy to listen to others and we can work through which of those we think are feasible. But we want immediate financial support for consumers of heating oil, bottled gas, solid fuels, those reliant on generators for electricity and prepayment meters. Those aren't helped by the current proposals. Yes, we do think there's a benefit in reducing VAT to 17.5%, because that puts money back into the pockets of average families, unlike a 45% tax rate abolition, and it boosts the economy and supports local retailers. And we want to see a real and immediate increase in investment in renewable energy and an energy plan that not just helps decarbonise the UK energy network, but gives us cheaper energy costs as well. That's entirely consistent with the climate emergency that we've declared. The motion also looks at action the council can take directly. We want to explore enhancing and improving the council tax reduction scheme that we have the decision to make on, that will reduce the tax burden on lower income families, not to the tune of 42p a month, but significantly more, several £100s a year. We want to protect and expand partnership grants around advice services, We heard mention in the previous debate about the closure and the Citizens Advice Bureau and the lack of independent advice in this part of the district. We want to work with partners to improve access to food across East Cambridgeshire. We're now in a crisis where many are unsure how they will adequately feed themselves. And we do think a cost of living fund is important, and that's why we're proposing in this motion, not £10,000, but £20,000. Support this motion and the council can agree to allocate £20,000. Reject it and we're just rolling back to a much smaller sum that was proposed in the previous debate. And finally, we want to see East Cambridgeshire Cost of Living Emergency Summit, bringing together and working together with stakeholders from all tiers of local government, citizens advice, food banks, local trade unions, chambers of commerce, our members of parliament, to look at what we can do collectively to help those residents who are struggling. This is a crisis. It's an emergency, the likes of which we've not seen for decades. We need to step up, declare a cost of living emergency and undertake practical steps to help those residents that we represent and who are relying on us for action.
Thank you, Councillor Inskip. I've got, now open it up to speakers. I've got Councillor Brown.
Sorry, Chairman. A point of order, please, and some advice from either Tracy or Maggie. Under Procedure Rule 20, rescission of preceding resolution. Since we've just taken a decision to bring in the £10,000, I don't think we can discuss the £20,000 because that previous motion would then have to be rescinded, and there's been no proposal to rescind it.
Thank you for that, Councillor Brown.
If you'd like me to come in, Chairman. Obviously, the previous motion did set up the fund of £10,000. So that was something that didn't exist before. So that is an addition. It's not a rescission of that. Effectively, this would be a further motion to supplement that. So you've set up the principle in the previous motion. Effectively, you're not rescinding that provision, you're enhancing that provision if you support this motion.
Okay, thank you for that, Tracy. So the motion as it is stands. So do I have any, now going to the debate, I've got Councillor Goldsack first.
Thank you. A couple of things. First of all, thank you for delivering it as the way you did, Councillor Inskip. I understood every word. Thank you very much. A couple of points though. In your verbals, you said the East Cambridgeshire £18,000 pensioners will see a rise of 3.8%. In your written document, it says 3.1%. Okay, I'm just pointing out here that's an issue. That's obviously an error one way or the other.
Yeah, so point of purpose and explanation that the motion is correct. I misspoke, but in either way, it's a real.
I can accept that. That's absolutely fine. So it's 3.1. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Just another thing, and I find this quite interesting, and this is the semantics of this coming after the motion that's just been. I think my reading of it is that actually the proposal now is for £30,000 because this would be an additional 20 to the 10 that we've already got. So that's just something to consider. But for me, we see a lot of these at county council as well as district council. Once again, I would love to be able to think about what we could do with VAT. I would love to be able to think about what we could do to increase UK investment. I'm quite interested in thinking about immediate financial support for customers on heating oil. Do you know what? I've just been ostracised for not having heating oil, bottled gas, solid fuel or anything else. What about the thousands of people that have got gas coming through the floor, coming through pipes? I don't understand. There's lots of things in this that I just, lots of things I think were well-meaning. I think that were well delivered. But unfortunately, this bit in here, when we asked the chief executive to write, spend the time doing something for locals rather than fantasizing about something that can't be done. Unfortunately, I can't support the revised, amended, last delivered, most read out motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Goldsack. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I to some degree, I agree with my fellow councillor. I do share certain cynicism about writing to the to the government and expecting them to respond to our bit, but I have a favourite in the thick of it quote that says, if you think you're too small to make a difference, then you should spend a night in a tent with a mosquito. So I think, you know, writing to it and putting forward and trying to get something is a valid response or a thing to do that would, you know, that's not too detrimental to the council. With regard, I thought Councillor Inskip sort of made some quite salient points, really. I mean, about the gas and the things like that. You know, we are looking at the things that haven't been addressed by the government that need to be, and the way they're going to be administered to the local population. And being a rural one, it does make a quite significant part to our rural community, because a lot more people are on the bottled gas and things like that. In all, and I don't want to go on and reiterate lots and lots of things that have already been said tonight. I think this just offers our council more. Yes, we've got what, you know, the previous motion has done, but it is looking just to provide more. And that's what, you know, the little that we can do. He's looking to provide more by bringing them together. Hopefully we can provide more resources for our community, which is, you know, what we're all here for. I'll keep it quite short.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. I've got Councillor Huffer, then Councillor Christine Ambrose-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Imitation is surely the greatest form of flattery. This is a very last minute motion that only actually, or altered motion that only appeared after we came up with the £10,000. Extraordinary timing. And you hadn't even got the manners to let us see sight of it before you brought it in front of us. We had to wait. It was so last minute, so last minute. I mean, really, is this the best you can do? Really the best you can do? And as chair of operational services, if I felt that we needed to find more than £10,000, if we had people who were in need, that money would be found. I'm not going to allow a figure and a motion to prevent me helping residents, I can assure you. But really, you can't find anything else other than to copy us and then slightly try and up it. You should be ashamed of yourselves.
Thank you, Councillor Huffer. I've got Councillor Christine Ambrose-Smith, then Councillor Harries.
Thank you. Irrespective of the merits of the suggestion, I don't really think we should be making commitments on the hoof at sort of 5 minutes notice. I think a little consideration of the points raised here would be valuable. And so I really don't see how we can support this off the cuff motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Christine Ambrose-Smith. I've got Councillor Harries, then Councillor Bailey.
So let's look at the timeline here. We originally put down a motion that's substantially the same as this, asking for a cost of living emergency. The administration, a little while later, then put down their own motion that was clearly designed to address what we were going to say and undercut it, which is fine. That's politics. It's your right. It's your right, and that's what you did. And because of the chaos in the country and in the central government over the past 3 days, when all of us were watching this with a kind of, and by the way, I was getting a sweepstake up. I was asking people if they match a £10 bet that you withdraw your motion, because it was so slavishly adoring in its original wording of the people who've just been defenestrated. You changed it at the last moment. We got the revised wording this morning. We tried to amend it and were told we couldn't, despite the fact that you'd only provided the revised wording to us this morning. We made these changes as a direct result of the fact that we were not given enough time by you, by your manipulation of procedure, to do anything more about this. As for the rest of this, it is really amazing that we're arguing about this. Our view is that we ought to have the best coordinated response we can. We know that writing to MPs is very often a wasted effort, but nevertheless, we believe that bringing people together will give us a better chance of coming up with effective, workable solutions. And unlike some other people, we're prepared to be collegiate about it. We would actually, as with the working group, the one working group we have, we would get around the table and talk about this and talk about how we can actually do practical things to help people to talk and then act. You don't act unless you analyze the situation and develop good responses to it. You can't have it both ways, you know. No, and I don't want to have it both ways either. But you have to understand that doing things in the way that you've been doing for the past X number of years gets us into this mess we are now. And I'm just going to leave you with one thought. Vladimir Putin, his war, the energy emergency. This country is less reliant on Russian gas than anybody else in Europe. We used to use 3% of our total fuel mix gas imported from Russia. That's less than anybody else. And yet we've suffered worse than anybody else over the past few months in terms of consumers. Why? Because the Conservative government closed our one and only large gas storage facility in 2017. Liz Truss approved that closure. So what we've been doing is exporting our gas to countries that were prudent enough to keep their storage facilities in place and then import it back through the general global market at a massive markup. You do these stupid things and people suffer. You don't, but your party did. And what you are saying is this is Vladimir Putin's fault. It's not Vladimir Putin's fault. We put the pistol to our heads and pulled the trigger. That's why we're in this state, but you won't be honest enough to analyze the situation. And here we are, people's mortgages unaffordable, people not able to heat their houses, people not able to eat, 3,000 food packages from food banks. I'll talk to anybody, even Lucy Fraser, if that would help us come up with any kind of solution for this. And all you can do is carp at us because we're trying to find a solution. I am sick of it.
Thank you, Councillor Harries. I've got Councillor Bailey now.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Well, as ever, Councillor Harries is sadly misinformed. In fact, it was the administration that put down the cost of living motion first, which is why it appears first in the order paper. We certainly weren't reacting to anything that the Liberal Democrat group was doing. He's completely wrong. He also accuses us of manipulation of procedure, which an accusation that I totally resent. We have not manipulated any procedure. The events changed as the party opposite have been oh so keen to point out to us, and our altered motion was submitted along with due process in time yesterday. Unlike the one today, which we've had to scrabble to have a look at and even halt the actual meeting in order to do so. And in fact, I thought they'd be unveiling some new and innovative motion, but I really didn't need a copy of their altered motion, as the change is actually very familiar to me because I wrote it. And as Councillor Huffer has said, imitation really is the best form of flattery, and I'm glad that they support our move to create a cost of living support fund. And if more funds are needed in that cost of living support fund, it is now created, and of course we will look at that at the time and top it up if we need to do so. It is the administration that has created that cost of living support fund, and the Liberal Democrat group, which notably voted against it. So, you know, that stands on record. This council stands on a record of doing the right thing and will continue to do so. They also copy our proposal back in February to freeze council tax. So, you know, they're used to copying us. Chairman, I've already outlined in detail the very significant support that the government is already providing to households and businesses. And I've already outlined the support and the information and advice and financial help that's available at a local level for people. And we've announced additional funding this evening. We're already working with our partners on delivering solutions, help and advice. We don't need a summit to get on with this work. Those meetings have already taken place. This work is already happening. The Lib Dems appear to be playing catch up. Just 2 days ago, Chairman, members will have all received the same flyer into their inboxes that I received, giving details of the latest cost of living drop-in event on the 27th of October. It's running from 9:30 till 2 o'clock at Ely Library. This is partnership working in action, Chairman. Our own community advice service will be there, as well as our home energy advisor. PECT, the Warm Homes Energy Advice Charity, will be there. They can help people that are on prepay meters with accessing energy vouchers, together with Cambridgeshire Skills, Anglian Water, P3, which provides advice, independent advice on housing, debt and wellbeing, Age UK, the How Are You campaign, Scam Awareness, the NHS and the Job Centre. It is partnership working in action. Our officers have been massively on the case on this issue for months now. We don't need to sit around calling summits and talking to our partners. We've been doing it for weeks. So we won't be supporting this motion from the Lib Dems this evening. We will continue to ensure that this council is doing what it does best, which is getting on with supporting our local residents day in, day out with the issues that they face. And we've created that cost of living support fund. And if we need to, we will look at additional funds if they are required to go into that fund, Chairman.
Thank you, councillor Bailey. I've got councillor Dupre.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome this motion from my colleagues, Councillor Inskip and Councillor Kane. It lays out very clearly the dire circumstances faced by the UK economy generally and households across East Cambridgeshire in particular. I welcome the call to declare a cost of living emergency and to take action commensurate with the massive scale of the problem on fuel, on VAT, on renewable energy, on council tax for the lowest income households, on partnership advice services, on affordable food. One of the most shocking statistics that I read the other day was that 1 in 7 people in this country is now skipping meals in order to be able to make ends meet and provide for their families. That is just scandalous in one of the richest nations on earth. I'm surprised at the complaint from the leader of the council about the alteration of the motion. We did supply it before the meeting started. We had assumed that it would be made available. It was not. However, at the time when the motion was put to this council some time ago to change the rules of procedure, and in particular to change the arrangements for alterations of motion, we pointed out the issue that you were creating. And we were told in no uncertain terms by Councillor Schumann, it is Councillor J. Schumann, who is not present tonight, that was all absolutely fine with him and he was perfectly happy with the arrangements that had been set up. We have worked under the arrangements that you have set up and under the conditions where, as we pointed out, that carried with it certain issues. You disregarded our warnings then, and now you're complaining about the outcome. It's just astonishing. I want to now talk briefly about this fund. I'm going to say, Councillor Bailey said in her speech that if we voted against the previous motion, we would be voting against £10,000 for this fund. I would say simply back to her, if you vote against this motion, you vote against a doubling of that fund. And that is straightforward, and that is your logic, Councillor Bailey, applied to this motion. However, what I thought was of particular interest was the comment from Councillor Huffer, which basically indicated that it doesn't actually matter what figure we discuss and agree here, because the administration will decide what it wants to do and do what it wants to do anyway, without reference. It could be 4 pence, it could be £1 million. You know, just let's invent a number and put it in, and the administration will pay no regard whatsoever to that agreement and will do whatever it wants. And that is the way that this council has operated.
Councillor Huffer, sorry.
Point of personal explanation. I said if more than £10,000 was needed, then we would find it. That's what I said.
Exactly.
I did not say. I did not
Okay,
say
let's
it
not
would be 4 pence.
argue across the table, please.
And my understanding of that it would be found in the same way that hundreds of thousands of pounds have been found for projects like the crematorium at Meikle, in total disregard of what has been decided and agreed here. A figure was decided for that project, is massively escalated. There is no attention at all given to the decisions of this council because the administration does what it likes, and that was an absolutely clear example of it. Finally, I want to welcome the proposal in this motion for a local cost of living summit, bringing together all those with a role to play in supporting local residents and families through this crisis. That is not the same as the very welcome drop-in session at the library, which I have been promoting to my residents and encouraging them to go to, because it would be a summit that would get the people with the resources, with the responsibilities and with the power around the table to agree what they could be done. And in particular, it would bring around the table the members of parliament, because they are the ones who have significant power, even under this dysfunctional government, to do something about things like rates of VAT, which are beyond, yes, they are beyond the power of this council. But getting members of parliament round this table to discuss with them the urgency of the problems we face, the situation of people genuinely struggling, and people who never ever thought that they would come into contact with the public agencies for help and support. Some research was done by a local economist here in Ely, who reckoned that something like the bottom half of the income bands of this country would be badly affected by the chaos that we've had. And this was before the mini statement. So people who have never before come into contact with public authorities for help are going to come into contact with the public authorities for help. And that requires a concerted effort by everybody at every level with power and influence. And I don't exclude the MPs, the North East Cambridgeshire and South East Cambridgeshire, from that responsibility to come together around a table and help
Could I
our
ask you to
citizens
wind
at
up
this very difficult time. Therefore, I commend this motion to members and I hope you will support it.
I'm seeing no other speakers, so I move to the seconder of the motion, which is Councillor Kane.
Thank you, Chair. I'm surprised and disappointed that so many members have spoken against this motion, which suggests that they're not going to vote for it. They spent a lot of time earlier on this evening talking about how important it was to listen to our residents, provide for our residents, and that's absolutely what this motion is about. It's saying what the problem is, and then it's saying we can't solve it on our own, but we want to be a catalyst to making sure it gets solved. We want the chief executive to write to central government, because they're the people who have power to make some of the big changes that we need. We heard, what about people with gas coming through the pipes? Why are they excluded? Well, we heard earlier, the government has capped the prices for those of us who have our electricity or our gas coming through our pipes. But for those of us who have to get oil in or bottled gas, or who are on prepayment meters, or people who aren't the direct bill payer, how are they getting the help? That's why this motion is asking for those people to get help. Every time most prices go up by just £1, they go up by £1.20 because of the impact of VAT. So VAT is multiplying the inflation effect. That's why we're saying, look at VAT, look at reducing VAT. Of course, it would have been nice to say, just do it, but we had the mini budget and the financial chaos that has come from there. So it's going to have to go into the pot to see if it can be afforded, but it would be a really good thing to do because it cuts prices directly to the consumer. It helps people because it lowers their bills. It also helps retailers because the products they're selling don't have to be so expensive. And we're also picking up that it's really, really important that we decarbonize our energy network in this country. And we can't do that in East Cambs. We need government to do that. So writing to them to ask them to do it is a perfectly reasonable thing to do. And as Councillor Dupre said, drop-in events, they're great. I don't wish to be overly unpleasant, but my part of the district in the south, it's incredibly difficult to get to Ely in a timely and affordable way. So a drop-in event in Ely Library, great for those who can get to it. not so great for people in my part of the district. So we need to look at how we get the message out across the district, and we might get help with that from bringing together this summit of people. We could do things like we could increase and expand our council tax reduction scheme, directly making it cheaper for the lower income people in our community. So this motion is doing exactly what they said earlier they wanted to do. And then the other thing we've done is, in a cross-party spirit, we've built on the cost of living support fund. We don't feel £10,000 is enough. We want to start with £20,000. So that's our suggestion in here. And I cannot but repeat what Councillor Dupre said. As the leader indicated, if the people opposite vote against this motion, they will be, let's be clear, they will be voting against increasing the financial support for our residents. So I hope, despite what people have said, that they will feel able to vote for this motion, because it is focused on how we address the cost of living crisis for our residents.
Thank you, councillor Kane. I now move to councillor Inskip to sum up the motion.
Thank you, Chair. So I think it was disappointing to see Councillor Brown, as he read the motion, working through in his head how he could use a procedural mechanism to prevent a vote to increase the allocation of the cost of living fund from £10,000 to £20,000.
Sorry, Chairman, on a personal
Councillor Brown.
explanation. We have a set of rules that we're supposed to work by. That was my reading of the rule.
Yeah.
I was told I was wrong.
Yeah.
So be it.
We've
Yeah,
got
no,
clarification
I-
now. You're in order to do
Yes,
what you're
no,
doing.
I
Yeah.
understand that was Councillor Brown's reading of the rules, but the reason, but the consequence of that, if we'd have followed his definition rather than the accurate definition, would have been to prevent a vote on increasing the fund from £10,000 to £20,000. And I think that is despicable. Councillor Goldsack, he says, why not gas? Well, what the government has done is not great to protect those who are having to pay their gas bills, but the government has at least put in and taken action for those who use mains gas, to put in this 6-month guarantee. It was 2 years. Now, of course, that was rowed back on. I would hope, I haven't checked the news in the last couple of hours, but I'd hope that 6-month guarantee is still in place. But it doesn't address those who use heating oil. It doesn't address those who use bottled gas or solid fuels or reliant on generators for electricity. And we have a lot of those sorts of people in our district. Not everybody has the luxury of being able to have mains gas and then benefit from the government's energy guarantee. And that's why we want to see more done in that area. On timing, the original motion we submitted on the 4th of October. It isn't something that we've just this moment pulled out of the hat. The first time we saw the proposal of a cost of living fund from the administration was at 9:10 this morning, less than 9 hours before the meeting. And yes, we agree it's a good idea, and that's why we've included in our motion. But we just don't think £10,000 is enough, given the severity of the problem. The revised motion was sent out at 5:30 this evening to officers, after I'd had a chance to discuss with my seconder to make sure that she was happy for me to put that proposal in. I am really disappointed to hear the comments from Councillor Bailey. It reeks of complacency. We're doing enough is the message. We've done all these things already. We can't learn anything from anybody else. We don't need to do anything else. We just carry on with what we're doing. But again, the drop-in centre at Ely Library, it's welcome. It's something I've been promoted to the residents in my ward and encouraging them to go along and attend. But it's no substitute for bringing together those stakeholders listed in the motion and working out how we can solve the problem.
Councillor Bailey, sorry.
Point of personal explanation.
Yeah, okay, yes.
I wasn't for 1 second. I think there seems to be a misunderstanding over there, because I've heard it mentioned twice now. I wasn't for 1 second suggesting that this was an alternative to a summit. I was suggesting that this is the result of the partnership working that is already and has already been taking place. That partnership working that the summit calls for is already happening. And this is one example of the result of that work.
Okay, thank you.
So Councillor Bailey is not proposing an alternative to the summit. She doesn't think the summit is needed. Again, that's exactly the complacency I was talking about. And thank you for clarifying that.
Sorry, point of personal explanation. I have already explained that those meetings have already taken place, Chairman.
But the key takeaway from the vote on this motion, as has already been laid out, is if you vote against this motion, following the logic of Councillor Bailey, you reject an increase in the cost of living fund from £10,000 to £20,000 tonight. We'd have to come back at some point if we find that isn't enough and agree a further increase. Let's not worry about that. Let's get that £20,000 agreed tonight and let's start to help our residents. Pensioners and those on low incomes are paying hundreds of pounds already a month more on fuel bills, despite all of the government's guarantees. They're seeing food bills rocket, not by the headline rate of 10.1% inflation, but over 14%. Those who have mortgages are seeing mortgage repayments increase by hundreds of pounds as they come off their existing fixed rate deals. Some of that is global, but some of that is damage that's being inflicted more recently. And those looking to get on the housing market are seeing mortgage deals pulled. This is a crisis the like of which we have not seen for decades. We need to step up. We need to declare a cost of living emergency. That's the first thing that this motion does. Again, if you vote against this, you're voting against declaring a cost of living emergency. This motion isn't about point scoring against the national government. It doesn't mention praise or criticism of the national government. It just lays out the facts. It talks about where we could lobby the government. But that's where it differs from the last motion. It's about helping our residents. We need urgent practical steps. That's what this motion would help ensure. And that's why I want everybody to support this tonight.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Inskip. Oh, we now move to the vote.
Ask for a recorded vote.
Okay, yeah. When you're ready, Tracy.
When I call your name, can you say whether you're voting for, against, or abstaining on the motion? Councillor Christine Ambrose Smith.
Against.
Councillor David Ambrose Smith.
Against.
Councillor Sue Austin.
Against.
Councillor Anna Bailey.
Against.
Councillor Ian Bovingdon.
Against.
Councillor David Brown.
Against.
Councillor Charlotte Kane.
For.
Councillor Lorna Dupre.
For.
Councillor Lavinia Edwards.
Against.
Councillor Liz Every. Councillor Mark Goldsack. Councillor Simon Harries.
For.
Councillor Julia Huffer. Councillor Bill Hunt. Councillor Mark Inskip.
For.
Councillor Alec Jones.
For.
Councillor Alan Sharp.
Against.
Councillor Amy Starkey. Councillor Lisa Stubbs. Councillor Paola Trimarco.
Against.
Councillor Joe Webber.
Against.
Councillor Alison Whelan. Councillor Christine Whelan. Councillor Gareth Wilson. So the motion is lost by 8 votes in favour to 16 votes against with no abstentions.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. I now move to item 9 on the agenda, which is to answer questions from members. And we have 6 questions on the agenda. If I could, for the benefit of the members of the public watching on live stream, if I can ask the member asking the question to read the question out, please. Councillor Huffer is the first one.
Thank you, Chair. I know from a statement that the leader of the Cambridgeshire County Council on the 30th of September 1922, that she thanks Mayor Nick Johnson for his swift response to the cancellation of numerous bus services in our district. Can the leader of the council provide clarity to one of my residents who has information that Stagecoach had made numerous attempts to speak to Mayor Johnson and his team about this situation as far back as May this year, and having failed to get a response, subsequently informed the combined authority in August 22 of their intention to cancel routes which affect my residents in Fordham and Isleham and many others in the district. Can she please give an update on what is happening with the bus service in Cambridgeshire? Can she also clarify the situation regarding the various funding sources from central government and the success or otherwise of the combined authority in obtaining such funds for local transport services?
Councillor Bailey, if you could answer that, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Huffer, for the question. It is my understanding that the Mayor and CPCA staff were made aware of the issues being reported by Stagecoach back in May of this year. The first public signs of distress in the bus network surfaced in the form of the issues with the Ely Zipper and the Wisbech 68 service in April and May of this year. This council had to actually step in to ensure there was no loss of service for Ely Zipper users. It's a matter of huge regret that the combined authority failed to secure any of the millions allocated to other areas for their bus service improvement plans, and that it was not part of the list of combined authorities that were granted sustainable transport settlements. Some areas have had hundreds of millions of pounds, many areas have had tens of millions. Following receipt of the external auditor's letter to the combined authority, which cited concerns about the conduct of the Mayor's office and governance issues, government has, of course, been withholding funding from the combined authority. So I think currently we shouldn't perhaps be surprised that it wasn't on the list. I'm pleased to report, though, the successful outcome of yesterday's combined authority board meeting, where all but one of the 18 axed Stagecoach routes and the 5 routes that were earmarked for changes in the amber list have been successfully retendered. Residents will need to study timetables and the routes carefully when the information is released on Monday, because not everything will be an exact like for like. One problem with the 39 service between March and Chatteris remains, but it is a work in progress. This does stabilise the situation until the end of March next year. The Ely Zipper and the 68 are also now being supported by the combined authority until the same time, so that decisions about their future can be taken alongside the rest of the network. The Mayor, of course, has put bus services front and centre of his emerging local transport plan and has particularly stated his intention to improve rural bus services. That's music to our ears in this authority. Unfortunately, with all the turmoil at the combined authority, the work on franchising has stalled in the last 18 months, and it does now need to be expedited, but that will take several years to make progress, and it's far from easy. Of course, the Greater Cambridge Partnership has put out proposals to fund services through a congestion charge. It is enormously unpopular. We here have already decided that congestion charging is not the answer. But it will, of course, be up to the Liberal Democrat-led County Council to decide on the imposition of congestion charging next year. I suspect, Councillor Huffer, that what residents will see come January 2023 is a mayor rushing to impose a precept on all households and a county council moving to impose congestion charging. These things wouldn't have been necessary if the CPCA hadn't been in turmoil and had secured central government funding. And these things are still not necessary. What we should be doing is reviewing the combined authority's revenue budget to free up money. We need to articulate what a good service will look like in a county-wide bus strategy. This council's already provided information about that for our patch, and we need to massively and rapidly build on our newfound relationship with the providers in a new strategic partnership. We need to put forward credible bids for future rounds of bus service improvement monies, and we need to rapidly move on with the case for franchising. And all these things are possible with a high functioning combined authority. None of them require taxing residents through a precept or a congestion charge.
Councillor Harris, there's no debate on these
This
questions.
is a point of order.
Okay, right.
What we've just heard is a 5 or 6 minute party political speech. Is that actually what questions are for?
With respect, it was 3 minutes, 26 seconds. I am timing it, so they're allowed 5 minutes, but it's the answer that the leader chose to give. So, yeah,
Fine.
Item I've got is a question from councillor Liz Every to the Leader of the Council.
Thank you, Chair. Can the leader please provide an update on progress with the planning application for new homes, including affordable homes at the former MOD site in Ely?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Every, for your question. And just by way of background, I'd remind members that it was a requirement of the contract that we entered into with the Ministry of Defence that we seek planning permission for infill housing. Effectively, we were required by that contract to test the extent of the local plan to establish the extent of what was deliverable in terms of numbers of houses. And that is the process that we've been going through. That is exactly what has taken place. And it was the right thing to do to enter that contract with the MOD. It's brought the empty homes back into use. It's revitalised the whole site. It's enabled 15 of the refurbished homes to be brought forward as shared ownership properties for people with ties to the local area. It's facilitated the land swap with the NHS to support redevelopment plans by them of the hospital and some activity by the county council. And I understand that the land swap deal actually completed yesterday, which is excellent news. And now, of course, it's going to deliver new homes, including affordable homes with the open green space remaining intact. So it was a good decision. And earlier this month, the planning application for 27 new homes, which includes 33% affordable homes, was cross-party and unanimously granted planning permission. Plans will come before council in the future to increase the percentage of affordable housing on the site. That was a promise we made once planning permission had been secured. And I want to thank officers and all the staff at Palace Green Homes for their stewardship of this project.
Thank you, councillor Bailey. The next item I've got is a question from councillor Ian Bovidon to the Leader of the Council.
Thank you, Chair. Can the leader please give members an update on the crematorium project?
Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Councillor Bovington. Delighted to do so because we have an update to give. Last week, of course, the application for the crematorium off the A142 near Block Fen was granted planning permission with almost unanimous, and it was cross-party support, which is excellent, for an eco-crematorium, which and space for natural burials, a memorial garden and a pet cemetery. The plans include on-site electricity generation, which is expected to deliver 70% of the energy needed on-site. And of course, we understand very much the strong feelings about the old Meeple Outdoor Centre, which was a much-loved facility for years. I loved it too. We tried very hard, cross-party, to get it back up and running for outdoor activities. We tendered it twice. And on one of those occasions, that included no restrictions on its use. So we have tested the widest possible use of that site through that process, but sadly, it wasn't deemed to be viable. And since then, of course, there are now nationally important and protected species using that site, such as water vole, otters, and a very rare pond species. This is a massive cause for celebration. It is a wildlife site. It's a special site. It enjoys protections. And it is the Wildlife Trust, of course, that we've been working with that requires that the use of the wider site, therefore, because of the biodiversity on site, is restricted to passive use. So that's dog walking on a lead, bird watching and fishing. And it is them that is advising the council on the extent of what is and isn't possible there. So work is now progressing on the funding strategy, which does need considerable updating and which will come to Finance and Assets Committee and the final business case, of course, coming before full council next year. So given that the old use of the site isn't compatible with the biodiversity needs of the site, I am delighted that this alternative use has been granted permission, and I hope that we can bring this new facility forward, which is needed for our district. It's been a long-held ambition of the administration to provide a district crematorium and facility to try and keep costs low for people, be competitive to other facilities that people have to travel extensively to get to at the moment. And I think it will be a fantastic and nurturing location for people in a time of upset and need.
Thank you, councillor Bailey. I've now got a question from councillor Mark Inskip to the chair of the Finance and Assets Committee.
Thank you, Chair. By the way, I can say that I didn't detect much celebration amongst my residents about the crematorium plans. So my question is, last month, the government announced a reckless mini budget with £45 billion of unfunded tax cuts, which led to chaos for new homeowners. Hundreds of fixed rate mortgage products were withdrawn over the space of a few days before lenders returned with significantly more expensive deals. Mortgage payers have seen their monthly payments increase by hundreds of pounds, even though virtually all of the mini budget tax cuts have now been reversed following the massive U-turn this Monday. The premium on mortgage interest rates remains. The rise in the cost of mortgage payments is a bit of shock to many East Cambridgeshire residents already facing rising costs from the cost of living crisis. It's also a significant concern for commercial property development companies, with implications from slowing sales and downward pressure on new property prices. What actions have been taken to analyse the increased risks to East Cam's trading company business plan from the government's economic mismanagement? And what are the risks to East Cambridgeshire Council taxpayers should ECTC now fail to deliver on its business plan?
Thank you, Councillor Inskip. Councillor Brown, Chairman of the Finance and Assets Committee.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Inskip, for your question. ECTC is responsible for managing the increased risk. Cost of living is a risk identified in its risk register. The property element of the business plan for 2022-23 focuses on completing the sites at Ely and Haddenham and progressing plans to build out the former Paradise Pool site and MOD phase 2. So firstly, completing the sites in Ely and Haddenham. Completion of these sites is closely monitored by the ECTC management team. All remaining properties are now being marketed for sale. 2 houses have sold with mortgage offers in place in the past week. Secondly, progressing plans to commence the new sites. ECTC Director of Property and Commercial is working with the ECTC Finance Manager to develop the full business case to progress the former Paradise Pools site. The business case will include sensitivity analysis that will factor various risks, including the impact of increased mortgage rates. The same approach will be taken at the appropriate time for MOD phase 2. The ECTC board will make the decision as to whether to progress the site if and when it is satisfied a robust business case is in place. This council's MTFS doesn't assume any dividends from ECTC. The council has security in the form of a debenture over all of ECTC's unsecured assets. In the unlikely event that ECTC defaults on its loan, which is due for repayment in March 2026, the council can exercise its rights under the debenture. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. I've now got a question from Councillor Anna Bailey to Councillor Dupre.
Thank you, Chairman. Does the leader of the Liberal Democrat group support the introduction of a congestion charge for Cambridge? Yes or no?
Councillor Dupre.
Thank you, Chair. To be clear, I support the provision of reliable, convenient, affordable and attractive public transport that meets the needs of local residents and helps reduce congestion and carbon emissions. I support the provision of services that enable residents who cannot drive or cannot afford to buy and insure a car to access education, employment, healthcare, leisure and more. Recent data shows that Cambridge is the most congested UK city outside London, and indeed the 46th most congested city in the world. The recent actions by Stagecoach and the resulting losses of service are the clearest possible evidence that we need root and branch reform of the way public transport outside London is delivered. The deregulation of public transport by Margaret Thatcher in 1985 was an unmitigated disaster and has led to the situation whereby commercial operators can cherry-pick routes that profit their shareholders and abandon the rest. I would very much welcome a move towards franchising of bus services, ensuring unprofitable but socially necessary routes continue to be delivered alongside those that can run profitably without public subsidy. For this to happen, A source of sufficient, reliable and regular funding needs to be found. The options for this are, to say the least, constrained. Earlier this year, the government rejected a bus improvement funding bid from the combined authorities, we've already heard. A report to the Combined Authorities Overview and Scrutiny Committee earlier this week from Conservative County Councillor Anne Hay of Chatteris said that 2 causes of this rejection had been discovered. The first was that the Department of Transport had applied a deprivation score, which did not help our cause as a high growth area. The second was the government's view that the application had shown insufficient commitment to bus priority schemes, active travel and, interestingly, road charging. Meanwhile, the current Chancellor of the Exchequer is looking for £60 billion of cuts to clear up the previous Chancellor's mess, a package which will make austerity under George Osborne look like a Roman emperor's banquet. Without government support or likelihood of funding in these constrained times, it is unclear how the increases in public transport we need will be funded other than locally. And without attractive public transport options, it's unclear how traffic congestion and carbon emissions will be tackled. The proposal from the Greater Cambridge Partnership is currently out to public consultation. I would strongly encourage residents in East Cambridgeshire to read the consultation materials, attend the drop-in at Ely Library on the morning of Saturday, 29th October, another drop-in at Ely Library, consider what the proposals mean for them, and respond by the deadline of 23rd of December.
Thank you, Councillor Dupre. I've now got a question from Councillor Alec Jones to Councillor Charlotte Kane.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Kane, you weren't here on the 14th of July, but it was suggested by the opposition that the Lib Dem group should seek advice from Councillor Kane about possible uses for the previous Meeple Outdoor Centre. Could you please explain why you have not provided such advice?
Councillor Kane, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Jones, for your question. I remind Council that I've declared an interest in the plans for the crematorium. I'm answering this question because it has no bearing on the decisions Council may make. I'm reading the answer so as not to stray into the debate. I had frequently asked questions about Meeple Outdoor Centre at Finance and Assets Committee, most notably on 20th of June 2020, when I sought to have a report brought to the committee on the 23rd of July of that year, and was told that the officer was too busy to prepare such a report for that meeting, not least because they were focused on COVID-19. Just a few weeks later, at a special meeting of the council on 31st of July 2020, members were informed of the plans for a crematorium and pet cemetery on the site, a project on which expenditure started in 2018-19. Nobody from the administration corrected the misleading statement given to me by the officer on the 20th of June, even though the officer, the chief executive, and the leader of the council must have known it was untrue. And I assume the chair of finance would have known also, as significant funds were already being spent on the project. Once I knew the council's plans for the site, I decided I had to declare an interest. I have asked the planning department what advice the organisation for which I work has given. There were 2 emails on the planning portal and one which was not on the portal because it was marked sensitive. I cannot see the advice to which Councillor Bailey refers. I think she may be thinking of the ecological assessment report written by Syntegra Consulting. This report was commissioned by the council as the applicant for the crematorium. The East Cambs Planning Department has explained to me that the organisation for which I work does not provide statutory advice as asserted by Councillor Bailey. They provide advice to the council under a service level agreement because the council do not have an ecologist within the council. This organisation is not my organisation as asserted by Councillor Bailey. It is a registered charity which belongs to its members, who elect trustees to run the organisation on their behalf. Those trustees employ staff to carry out the day-to-day activities. I am one of those employees. It would seem that Councillor Bailey was being disingenuous in both her words and deeds, and was apparently more interested in political point scoring than facts. Having declared an interest in the matter, I have taken no part in discussions of the plans at council or its committees. As I hope all members understand, if a member has declared an interest, they should not take part in any discussions of the matter with fellow councillors. I must say I'm rather surprised that Councillor Bailey, as leader of the council, which is the applicant for planning permission for this site, felt able to speak so forthrightly about the uses of the site just weeks before it came to this council's planning committee for consideration. In summary, the reasons I've not shared the advice with the Lib Dem group are: 1, it would be improper to take part in the discussions. And even if it was proper to share it, 2, I have seen no evidence that the organisation for which I work has given the advice which Councillor Bailey claims. And I've asked the planning department to provide me with all the advice which that organisation has given to the planning department.
Thank you, councillor Kane. That ends the questions from members. So I move to item 10, which is the schedule of items recommended from committees and other member bodies. And that we've got 3 items which I propose to take individually from the Finance and Assets Committee on the 4th of October 2022. The first one is the Local Council Tax Reduction Scheme, LCTRS Review 2023-2024. If I can ask for a proposer of that recommendation, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to propose to recommend to council that we retain the 8.5% reduction scheme, i.e. the maximum reduction for a working age claimant remains at 91.5% for the 2023-24 financial year. And just referencing back to various other bits of the debate earlier on, we believe that a cost of living support fund is a better way of targeting help to those in need than a blanket reduction to 100%. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, councillor Brown. Do you have a seconder for that?
Happy to second, Chair, and I reserve my right.
Okay, thank you, I'll be on the mic there. Councillor Dupre.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move an amendment to this recommendation, as I believe I can under section 11 of the Rules of Procedure. At the meeting, it'll be familiar material to many. At the meeting of the Council's Finance and Assets Committee earlier this month, my group made the argument for a change to the local council tax reduction scheme. This change would have removed the current requirement for those households on the lowest incomes to pay a minimum of 8.5% of council tax. Instead, we argued that those on the lowest incomes should be exempted altogether from council tax, while the current cost of living crisis bears down on them more heavily than on many others. The total reduction in council tax take arising from this proposal would be around £210,000, of which around £15,000 would be the responsibility of this authority. It's a comparatively modest sum to return to households in the greatest need, and I would therefore move an amendment to remove the 8.5 limit and to insert a 0 limit as proposed at Finance and Resources.
Thank you, councillor Dupre. Do you have a seconder for that amendment?
I'd like to second that and I'll reserve my right to speak.
Okay, thank you. Was Councillor Christine Whelan? Yeah, thank you. Members, do we have any speakers on the amendment? We're speaking to the amendment. Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I mean, this was well rehearsed at Finance and Assets Committee, it's called, not Finance and Resources at this council. You know, it was very well discussed. And, you know, it is one of the driving reasons for creating, you know, there are lots of sources and access to funds to help people getting into difficulty. You know, I'm proud of, I think people know that I'm proud of our record of freezing council tax for 9 years at this authority. We have the lowest district council tax in the county. And as I said earlier, you know, the Liberal Democrat-led county council increased their council tax by the maximum amount that was possible. That has far greater impact. And they put over half of that money raised straight into the bank. They took it out of the banks of our population and put it into the county council's bank account. People in East Cambridgeshire are facing larger council tax bills this year because the Lib Dem-led county council put their council tax up by the maximum. We froze ours. It is not of our making that this issue. I do believe that it's an important principle that people pay council tax, and a 91.5% discount is a generous scheme. In Cambridgeshire, the schemes vary from a 67% discount up to one instance, 100% discount in Cambridge City. Ours is a generous scheme. It's on par with other councils in the area and across the country. I do think that, you know, if we were to change it this year, it would be difficult for people to face a reversion back to the existing scheme in future years. What really matters here is about how people are supported and people's ability to pay. And how we help people that get into trouble and preferably before they get into difficulty. And as we've already rehearsed this evening, the Housing and Community Advice Service is there and it looks and does a very good job at helping people early. The East Cambs element of what we're talking about here, the East Cambs element of an 8.5% payment of an average Band D council tax bill is £12 a year, so £1 a month. The bill including the precepting authority of the expensive county council, which does have significant issues to face, I grant that, is £14.41 per month. We've already talked about the schemes that are available to help people, and we've launched a new scheme this evening. So what matters here is that we are confident that we can help and support people if they and when they do get into difficulty, but that the principle of paying a small sum towards council tax bills remains and doesn't get taken away and then try to bring in it again at a later date. I think it's important to keep it in place, knowing that there are safety nets there for people.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. Councillor Kane.
I'll surprise everyone here. I agree with Councillor Bailey. What matters is how people are supported. That's what Councillor Bailey said, and I think she's right. What matters is how people are supported. The easiest and quickest way to support people who have financial difficulties is not to make them pay any council tax, not to make them know who they go to for support, which fund they can bid into for support, not to make them jump through hoops to get their support. Simply just don't charge them a bill that they can't afford to pay and shouldn't have to pay. I think it's a very good idea that we should make the maximum, well, we should make it 100% so that those on the lowest income are not worried at all by having to pay the council tax bill, because at source, that worry is taken away. They don't have to work out where to go or anything. So let's support people, and let's remember what matters is how people are supported. The easiest, simplest way to support them is not to charge them that money in the first place.
Thank you, Councillor Kane. I now go to Councillor Harries.
Just want to address this issue, this attack line, which is used at every available meeting about the county council pushing up council tax, which it was advised to do by its officers because its reserves have been run down to 3% by the outgoing administration. And they were advised that this was at a completely unsafe level and that it was absolutely necessary in order to clear up the mess that they found when coming into office to raise that by a percentage point. This is a council, this particular council, our council, is very proud of continually adding to reserves whenever it can, and makes absolutely no hesitation about trumpeting this as good, prudent management. The county council had no choice but to rebuild its reserves because they were in a dangerous state. And with the increase of cost due to inflation over the past year, we can see that it's absolutely necessary that they have firepower in order to help people who are most vulnerable. And I can understand that this is a good attack line. And particularly when we are suggesting that in this case, we should not charge the most vulnerable people any council tax at all. But this is, you're mixing up two different items here. You believe that it's right that everybody should pay a little bit, even if it's only a little bit. Our view is that if they're particularly vulnerable, they should not pay at all. We are not great lovers of council tax, but we do know a dangerous situation when we see one, and we do know what has to be done to put it right. When the next government comes in at Westminster, we all know that they're going to inherit a blasted heath and are going to have to try to spend the 5 years of their mandate putting right the damage that's been caused now. It's happened before, no doubt it will happen again, and no doubt they'll be attacked for all the prudent fiscal measures they have to take in order to rebuild our finances. But that's life. When people make a mess of their term as an administration, those that come after them have to clear it up. And then you attack them because they're doing what's necessary to clear up the mess. Well, fine, it's politics, but could you give it a rest? It's not just, and it's not right. Anyway, sorry.
Thank you, councillor Harries. I've got councillor Inskip.
Thank you, Chair. Just coming back to what we're really discussing here, we're talking about the poorest residents in our district. We're talking about people who are struggling to heat their homes, to even struggling to pay to cook their meals, struggling to buy food, to put food on the table. We're talking about people, as we've seen in the earlier debate, who are increasingly using food banks across our district. We don't say to the poorest in society, you should still pay a bit of income tax to benefit from the government services. We don't say you should still pay a bit of national insurance. Those are obviously are decisions for national government, not us. But we do have the ability to say to those poorest, the people who are really struggling, we understand the plight you're facing. And the one thing that's in our power to do is to help you by saying those very poorest don't have to pay council tax. And it's not a huge amount, but it's a saving for those people who will make a difference. 8.5% of the council tax, that's about £125 a year. That, for these people who are really struggling, having that amount of money in their pockets will make a difference. Councillor Brown said he believes the better approach is the cost of living fund. A fund he's just voted against increasing from £10,000 to £20,000. So if we stay with that £10,000 figure, and we look at that Band D council tax, 8.5% of that, if you spent the entire £10,000 on trying to help those poorest households, you could only support 80 households across the district, less than 6 households per ward. If he thinks there are just 6 households in his ward who are really struggling with the cost of living crisis, he is completely out of touch with the reality that people are facing. He needs to get out there to recognise it's not about giving tax cuts to millionaires, it's about supporting those on the lowest and helping those out. And before Councillor Hopper tells me she didn't put the government where they are, it is Conservative Party members who have foisted leader and failed prime minister after failed prime minister out of that. You need to own that decision, and you need to do your little bit tonight to help out the poorest in society by supporting this amendment.
Thank you, councillor Inskip. I'm seeing no more speakers on the amendment, so if I can go to the seconder of the amendment, councillor Christine Whelan.
Yeah, I'm just going to reiterate what I've said at the Finance and Assets Committee, that this is a small price for the council to do to help the poorest people, the ones who are really in need of this, and I would hope that you would support this.
Thank you, councillor Christine William. As it's an amendment, I go to the proposer of the original recommendation to sum up on this debate.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll be brief because it's about time we got to a vote on it. Just comment on a couple of things though. Councillor Harris has a go at Councillor Bailey for referring to the county council. Well, I'm just going to throw the same thing back at Councillor Inskip, and he's talking about tax cuts for the richest, etc. It's the same, exactly the same argument, just coming back at you. If you think that bit's wrong, I think your bit's wrong. Quite frankly, Chairman, let's go to the vote.
I didn't understand the point that councillor Brown was making to me.
He's made the, yeah, obviously, yeah, he's made the point. So we need to go to the vote on the amendment. So, and the amendment we're voting on is that the recommendation on page 1 of agenda item 10 is to reduce the 8.5% reduction scheme to 0%. So all those in favour of that amendment? You've got them all, Tracy, yeah? And all those against the amendment? Okay, Tracy.
So the motion is lost by 7 votes to 17. Pardon, the amendment is lost.
So, Tracy, what was the numbers? Sorry.
7 votes to 17.
Okay, thank you. Members, so we now move to the original recommendation. Councillor Brown has already spoken to propose it. Do I have any speakers on the recommendation? None, in which case I'll go to Councillor Ian Bovingdon as the seconder of the recommendation.
Thank you, Chair. Just say that to support this, we have debated this at length in the group and at the Finance and Assets Committee. And I think the agreement is quite clear that we already give a 91.5% discount. For the reasons outlined in this meeting, I therefore support the motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bovingdon. I've now moved to Councillor Brown as the original proposer. You don't want to add anything else? Okay, fine, thank you. In which case we go to the vote then, and the recommendation is that the council retain the 8.5% reduction scheme, i.e. the maximum reduction for a working age claimant remains at 91.5% for the 2023-2024 financial year. So can I ask all those in favour of that recommendation, please? You okay, Tracy? Yes. And those against, please. Could you say that to the mic, Tracy, just for the benefit of those online?
The recommendation is carried by 16 votes to 8.
Thank you for that. We now move on to the second item from the Finance and Assets Committee on the 4th of October. And this is in respect of the medium-term financial strategy update, and it's to recommend that council approve the increased premiums chargeable on long-term empty properties detailed in paragraph 5.4 of the submitted report, which is under appendix B, I think it is, of the report. Again, do I have a proposer for this?
Happy to propose, Chairman.
Do I have a seconder for that?
Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you. Anybody who wants to speak to that proposal? No, I'm seeing nobody. And I'm judging by the small amount of introduction, you don't want to come back on that and speak on it. So we go straight to the vote.
It's very self-explanatory, Chairman.
Yeah.
Go to the vote.
So all those in favour of the recommendation that we approve the increased premiums chargeable? I think that's unanimous. Thank you. Back on, the final one is in respect of the compulsory purchase order of land at Lode Road, Bottisham. And I know, I'm sure councillor Kane and I have sat through many meetings at Bottisham Parish Council listening to this. So if I can move to the proposer of that, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Happy to propose just a couple of words though on this one because it is compulsory purchase. And I just want to make clear to everybody that all parties involved are very happy for this to go ahead. The National Trust, by their ruling, needed somebody to act as to compulsory purchase the land, basically, and that somebody has to be us. So whilst I'm not a fan of compulsory purchase, there are occasions when it needs to be done for the benefit of all concerned. So that's why I'm happy to propose it, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, councillor Brown. Do we have a seconder for that proposal?
Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you, councillor Bobinder. Do I have any speakers? And I think councillor Kane has indicated.
Well, I was actually indicating to second, but never mind. But I'm happy to speak as well, Chair, not for very long because I don't want to detain members. But I do just want to confirm what you've said and what councillor Brown said. This is a proposal that Bottisham Parish Council have been working on for a very long time. They've been widely consulting and indeed they're going to pay the costs of it. So I hope that council will agree it and then Bottisham Parish Council with the help from our officers can move forward on something they've been planning for a very long time.
Okay, thank you, councillor Kane. Do I have any other speakers on this? And the proposers and seconders are happy. I mean, there's quite a long recommendation on here, but as councillor Brown explained, the National Trust require us to go through this procedure to transfer that land. But can I ask all those in favour of the proposal? And again, I think that's unanimous. Thank you. I now move to item 11, which is the making, or as it says in brackets, the adoption of the Hadnam and Aldrich neighbourhood plan. If I can ask Sally Bonnet to introduce the paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. You have before you a copy of the Hadnam and Aldrich neighbourhood plan. At the recent referendum, approximately 90% of the votes cast were in favour of the plan. The final step in the process is for this council to formally make the Hadnam and Aldrich neighbourhood plan part of the development plan for East Cambridgeshire with immediate effect. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sally. I have asked councillor Wilson if he wanted to propose this recommendation, which he's agreed to, and I will second it from the chair. If councillor Wilson wants to say some words. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very pleased indeed to propose this. This that you've got here, which is quite a pretty document, actually has involved 2 years of really hard work by a number of people. The parish council and our parish clerk have worked really, really hard on this, and a number of parish councillors, and also very interested and specialist members of residents who live in Hadnam have put their work into it, taking photographs, giving information, working on the history, and I think it's an excellent document. One of the important things about this is that when we have this document, it is seriously taken into account when planning applications in Hadnam take place. And the most important thing is that we have clearly defined boundaries where our parish boundaries are and where people are allowed to build and where they're not allowed to build. And this has not been done arbitrarily. It is been worked by a lot of people in the council. People have had we've had meetings, we've had people coming into their village hall and looking at plans and putting up suggestions that they would like to put in. The children from our local primary school took part and put up some proposals. One of them, two of them were perhaps a little bit ambitious. I noticed one of them wanted to have a sweet factory in Hadnam. But there's a lot of serious work that's been taken part. Hadnam is not the sort of place that says we don't want any houses in our area. We're happy. We want to stay as we are. No, we accept that people will need to live in Hadnam, and we welcome people living in Hadnam because it's a delightful place to live in. I personally am very lucky to live in the middle of Hadnam, and I am all very proud of what we've managed to achieve in Hadnam.
Yeah, hang on a minute. Sorry, Councillor Wilson. Oh, okay, sorry. Okay.
We've also, if you look at this thing, see that we have lots of nice green open spaces. Most of them owned by the parish council are very prominent in making sure that we have plenty of green spaces. We've also managed to get quite a few affordable houses. Our Hadnam Community Land Trust, also supported by our parish council, have been very successful and have virtually got their full 19 houses. By the end of this year, we hope that they will all be there. And so we welcome people to come to Hadnam, and we're happy to do it, but we don't want big developers putting enormous plans in for totally unsuitable houses in totally unsuitable areas. So please support this, and I hope that you will support it unanimously, because we have put a lot of work into it, and the people of Hadnam have said this is what we want.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. I've got Councillor Hunt next. I wanted to speak. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed the recommendation is that we congratulate Hadnam Parish Council, but actually I don't think that's enough. I think they want to be congratulated with enormous enthusiasm, and it's been I had a contact with Hadnam because I used to be the county councillor there, so I'm aware of what work's gone into this. It's been a community working very hard together, and I think it's not only a matter for the parish council, but also for the two clerks that have worked and still work there. And I know that a lot of the community supported this, and that there's been, and for example, Councillor Wilson talks about the CLT. Well, of course, that was but it wasn't just the people that he indicated. It was a lot of people helped towards that, and I'm delighted at its success, and I'm delighted that we're in a position today to congratulate Hadnam Parish Council, and I do that with all my heart.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. I've got Councillor Huffer and then Councillor Harries.
I just wanted to add my congratulations to all the people that helped on this, and I know it's a huge community effort and hours and hours and hours of work. And if I could have the information about the sweet factory so that I could take that back to Ford, and we might add that into ours. I think that personally, that's a winner. I can't understand why you didn't take it up. They are welcome to bring the sweet factory to Fordham. I will make great use of it. But I just want to add my congratulations. I know how much work goes into these things, and you will benefit hugely as a community. I'm really proud of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Huffer. I've got Councillor Harries.
Just wanted to say that I know I often play the role of the angry naysayer at these meetings. So one of the very nicest things about being on this council has been seeing the neighbourhood plans and seeing how hard councillors have worked on this. I remember the Fordham plan, all the work that's been done at Little Port, the Sutton plan, and all the others. And it's really inspiring to see complete communities working together, being motivated, being mobilized, putting their heads together, coming up with ideas for the future. And why wouldn't we all be happy about this? This is how we should be. So good work.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Harries. I've got Councillor Bovingdon and then Councillor Inskip.
As a former member of Aldworth, I'm pleased to see this come forward finally after many years of hard work. I'm also currently working on the Surham neighbourhood plan. So once again, know how much work goes into this. And I'd like to also thank Fordham and Witchford, particularly neighbourhood plans, for being able to use some of your material in putting forward our Surham plans. Good luck to you.
Thank you, councillor Bovingdon. I've got councillor Inskip.
Yeah, I think a similar theme to the previous comments. I think for those of us who've been involved in creating neighbourhood plans for our area, we do know it's an awful lot of work, particularly, but it's a very fruitful exercise because it actually, although it's a planning document, it's a way to bring the community together and understand what their needs are, sweet factories or whatever else there is. And I think this is now pleased to see what Hadnam have done. I think it's a great document. There's one or two ideas because we're currently revising the Sutton plan. So I hope I don't get accused of plagiarism again tonight when I look at one or two of the ideas that we're already actually looking to include. For example, the dark skies policy that Hadnam have got. So well done to Hadnam, and I would encourage those parishes that haven't already embarked on a neighbourhood plan journey to do the same. There's a lot of experience and advice around now in East Cambridgeshire that they can draw on.
Thank you, councillor Inskip. I'm seeing no more speakers. Yes, one of my parishes is working quite hard on that, and there seems to be a battle amongst members tonight for a sweet factory. So there might be a as a second of the motion, all I can say, if I can congratulate Hadham Parish Council and all those who've worked really hard on this, and thank you for your. Do you want to come back, councillor Wilson, on or any? I would hope that is the case. If I can put it to the vote that we congratulate Hadham Parish Council on its preparation of the neighbourhood plan and the successful referendum outcome, becoming the 5th parish council to do so in East Cambridgeshire, and we formally make the Hadnam and Aldworth neighbourhood plan. All those in favour of that? Thank you, members. That's unanimous. We move now to item 12. This is the community governance review, Borough Green, Wesley Worsley's parish boundary, and Adrian Stokes to introduce the paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got not much to add to the report, so I'm happy to actually recommend the recommendations as set out in 2.1 to 2.4. There is one slight issue over the recommendation 2.4, which relates to the request to the Boundary Commission to change the district ward boundary so that it aligns with the parish boundary. The Boundary Commission advised councils earlier this year to submit their boundary alteration requests by the 1st of October. So that changes could be in place for the 23 May elections, as it usually takes the Commission several months to actually process all these requests. Unfortunately, this didn't fit in with the review timetable. However, I have contacted the Commission directly about this, and though of course they cannot give any guarantees, they were very confident that our late submission would be processed in time for the May elections in 23. That's my report, Chairman. Now, happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Adrian. I'm going to propose this from the chair as it's a procedural item. I mean, I know both of these areas because Borough Green's in my district ward and Wesley Worsley's is in Councillor Kane's ward, and they're both in my county council divisions. And the parish boundary is absolutely very bizarre. Do I have a seconder for the Councillor Kane? Does any member want to speak on this, or Councillor Kane, did you want to?
Just briefly, Chair, to agree with you that the current boundary is ridiculous, but also to thank the officer for doing the work on the consultation and the late suggestion that came in for a further change, and indeed for getting the Boundary Commission to probably agree that they'll get it through for us.
Thank you, Councillor Kane. Do I have any speakers on this? No, I'd just like to echo the thanks for the officer's work on this, and hopefully it'll be in place for the elections next May, because it is rather bizarre, some of those boundaries. Thank you. So can I ask for a show of hands on that, or can we take it as read? No. Yes, we got unanimous. Good. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Adrian, for that. We now move to item 13, which is questions of reports from the constituent representative on the combined authority. Do we have any questions from our members on the Audit and Governance Overview and Scrutiny Committee or the Combined Authority Board? I'm seeing none, in which case we take that as read. And then we move to item 14, which is the actions taken by the Chief Executive on the grounds of urgency, which is in respect of the COVID-19 Additional Relief Fund, which is for noting. Do I have any wishes for comments on that? No, so we take that for read, that's noting. In which case, members, that concludes the business for this evening. I'd like to thank members of the public and press who are watching on live stream for their, hopefully they had some enjoyment out of it, and apologies for the delay when we stopped it. And one final thing, members could, if you don't want to keep the glossy brochure, if officers, there's a box over there because officers are keen to reuse them. Thank you. Have a safe journey, everybody.